John McBride. Appreciate you
Thanks for
being.
having. Yeah, thanks for having me, Rich. I'm glad for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to this. I think it'd be real good for the audience. You've got a
Yeah.
lot of experience in the design world.
Yep.
It should be pretty
Yes, sir.
cool. Should be pretty
Thanks.
cool. Let me go ahead and give you an introduction so the audience kind of gets a feel for who you are and what you've done. You started out in product design and development at the Franklin Mint, where you
Hmm.
developed collectible models and themed products. You went on to work at Mattel Incorporated doing product design and styling. You designed Matchbox rescue trucks, Tyco RC stunt vehicles, and high-impact water guns. You then went on to work at GMP Diecast, again as a
Hmm.
product designer and developer, specializing in diecast collectibles and auto-themed products. From there, you went on to be a senior designer at Crayola, where you developed innovative toys and creative tools. And you're currently the director of product design at Bestway Global Holdings. And you're also the principal designer for them. But you also have your own business, which you're the owner and founder of, which is Midnight Octane, which you
Yes.
job out your design services.
Yep.
So, where I would like to start, and this is my only scripted question to the whole thing, so it's going to be pretty free flow. Where were you born, and what was life like for John as a kid?
So I was born in Binghamton, New York. So I came from upstate New York, and I lived, or actually, our home was in Appalachian, New York, but probably not a lot of people know where Appalachian. It's a very tiny town off Route 17. My dad at the time was a salesman, and found out a couple years later as a little kid that's where my creative talent came from. It's my dad's side of the family. But
Very cool.
what got me into cars is I think around the age of 4 or 5, I remember him selling Porsches at a Porsche Audi dealership in the Binghamton area. I can't remember the town exactly, but it's in that area. So I was always exposed to cars. And then I would watch my dad sketch handicap cartoons like freehand. And I'm
Nice.
like, so he told me as I got older, he said, this is how you figured it out. He asked me, how do you do that, Dad? So he showed me how to just a couple ways to draw and just gave me a pencil and just said, you were off. And I wasn't like some phenomenal artist right away, but I couldn't. He said, ever since I showed you that, you wouldn't put a pencil down. You just were always drawing because as a kid, your dad's your idol.
Yeah,
You want to be like your dad. And that's how I found out I had this talent. Years later, I got better. And my parents always encouraged my drawing and helped me in any way they could.
very
So
cool.
it's kind of how it took off.
Very cool. What did your mom work, or was she stay-at-home mom?
She, in the beginning, stayed home. My parents, my dad was, after they got married, they were really young. I think my mom and dad got married as like 18 and 21. So
Okay.
they were young, not a lot of money. We had a small house, and eventually he got a job with Procter and Gamble a few years later. My mom was working at a hospital as an administrator, so we had babysitters and different babysitters we'd go to after school and as we got older, like grade school. So I have a sister.
Okay.
She's 2 years behind me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. You said you got your drawing and your creative side from your dad's side of the family. Was your grandparents or any aunts or uncles creative as well as like your father was?
Yeah, I have on my dad's side, I believe I have an aunt for sure that had the talent. She really never did anything with it. I'm trying to think. My sister has a musical talent, like she can play by ear. So
Oh, cool.
she might have gotten something from my dad's side of the family.
Yeah.
I think there's another uncle that may also have had a creative talent. They said, you're the first one to do anything with it.
Gotcha.
My dad did implement that in his sales tools. He had a GED, he had a high school education, and he started working for Procter and Gamble. His creativity is what carried him beyond what a lot of these guys were able to do because he would use color coding systems and processes that he creatively developed to help sell.
Not
Not to get too far off the art thing, the creative thing, but he told me, he says, the reason I had to come up with a creative solution visually is because when you go in and you're seeing your accounts, you've got 2 minutes to get their attention. And if you can't communicate, because design and creativity, what we do is a communication tool, I believe.
yeah,
It's just a visual communication. And he was able to get them the information through these creative tools he created. So he still used his talent just as a sales tool. And
right,
at one point, he got VPs and CEO very interested in how are you doing this? Of course, teach the young guys.
right,
And then later, now you're going to be extinct because you're the old guy now. And but anyway,
right.
it's very interesting to see how he still managed to take advantage of that creative side and use it on a business side. So
Yeah, for sure. He was I'm seeing him as an innovator in terms of he's doing a position that's not necessarily highly creative, but he's figuring out I can innovate what I'm doing here with my creativity
yes.
to make these pitches better, to make the whole
Hmm.
system and processes better.
Yeah.
That's always fascinating to me as well. When you were in elementary school, were you a kid that was quiet and off to the corner, or were you pretty engaged as a kid in elementary?
I would say I was probably more on the quiet side, but the way that I think I got people's attention was through my drawing.
Okay.
So we'll use example. I in grade school, I say even like third and fourth grade, I was already developing comic strip characters, like developing from scratch and just making cute little drawings. And people, kids would ask, "What is that?" I'm like, "Oh, it's my little character." And I can't remember. I can see it in my head. I remember what it used to look like.
Yeah.
And I also was a big fan of Garfield. So
Okay.
I taught myself how to draw Garfield very well. And of course, the kids say, "Oh, can you draw on my book cover?" Remember when we had book
Yeah. Yeah.
covers?
For sure.
And of course, I've learned this in life as a creative. I'm always going to be who I am, regardless of how. There's a lot of positive, right? People love to, hey, can you like do drawings on my book cover? Can you do this little sketch for me? But then there's always somebody who's going to be jealous.
Right.
This has been something that unfortunately, like the entire span of, I'd say from grade school, even professionally, like there's always somebody that there's an issue of some sort. So
Okay.
there was this one kid, his name was Jeff,
All
and he
right.
was also an artist. But hey, I don't tell people who to go to, but they would always ask me to do the drawings and they would never ask him. And I don't remember. Maybe I was a little bit better, or they just wouldn't ask him. So he got mad and actually tried to get in a fight with me in the classroom because he
Oh,
was
wow.
so upset about it. And I'm like, I don't understand. See, just kids, it's just kids too.
Yeah.
But it was neat. And as I got into high school, that's how I learned pretty quick. Kids in school, like grade school or high school, you have to find somewhere to fit in. If you're like just this person off to the side, nobody knows what you're about or what you're like. You're the weirdo or
Yeah.
the freak, as they used to say in the 80s, a
Right.
freak.
Yeah.
But I use my art talent to show who I was because I think I'm an extrovert.
Okay.
But when you're in high school and even grade school, it's hard to fit in because if you're not into sports,
Right.
it's going to be difficult because everybody knows jocks and sports people and everything. But
Yeah.
I found a way to fit in with my art. And eventually it's like John's the class artist. So then it's even like the football players. Hey, can you help us just draw up a banner with, yes, I can do that. And I would draw it. And now you're accepted, right?
Right. Right.
Hey, we know he's the guy. If you need something drawn, he's the guy. So now you fit in. Okay, we know who you are. This is cool. You're accepted. And it doesn't happen instantly. It takes time. And that's how I use my art to find a way to fit in, like to communicate what I'm about, what I can do.
Yeah.
That's how I started learning how to find my way and where I wanted to go. So,
For sure. You're navigating this societal structure of being in school as with your creativity as a way of being able to say, hey, this is what I can do.
yep.
And then people see what you can do. And obviously, when they see what you can do and you're good, they want to gravitate to that, especially at that point in time in school. I even remember this a little bit, is if you had enough skill set in terms of not everybody's able to do what you're doing, that in and of itself pulls them in because they realize, oh, you're doing this thing that I can't do,
Yeah.
which is interesting. Also, too, the concept of the jealousy component, the kid who's doing similar things, but yet he's not getting the attention that you're getting because everybody's gravitating towards you,
Yeah.
which again, we understand that's a part of the industry anyways, that creatives are at certain points in time, they just have insecurities,
Mhm.
create that type of jealousy, or they see somebody excelling in this one field and they're trying to make it in this other field and it's not working. So there's always that, and always have that's always been there.
Yeah.
With being in school, whether it was elementary, was the instruction that you got, was that just from your dad, or did you have some classes in school as well?
There wasn't I don't remember anything in middle school.
Okay.
When I got into high school, being the creative person, we use the creative side of our brain. Math was not my thing, especially when I got into algebra. I'm like, why do we have letters in
Exactly.
math? There's no reason for this.
Yeah.
But in like English classes, we would have creative writing assignments, and that was something that I also found that I liked to do. Was that I my one of the great things that my mom really pushed me on was to correct grammar, spelling. It was always on me about just getting it right, proofread your thing. And I think it just that was the beginning of me being a more detail oriented person. Really make sure that go back and check things, make sure you're spelling, grammar, and then part of the creative process in the writing worked with the visual part because this is where I started. Hey, I want to start doing comic books. I've got to create characters. They got to say something. They got to be in an environment. You've got to describe them. So it was something I was passionate about, which pushed me to develop those skills as far as creative writing goes. And in English class, I remember I had a pretty good teacher. And I think to this day, she kept, I don't know if she still has it now, but she kept two or three of my reports that I creatively wrote because I'm using these as an example because I'd illustrate a cover and then I'd
Okay.
write it. And I was like, wow. And it was something that kind of told me like, hey, there's something, you're good at something here too. And you can use this with your drawing skills. And then that's where I really started getting into comic books. And then, so in high school, the first 2 years I took technical and mechanical drawing classes.
Okay.
I was already drawing with paint and pencils and things, but there's this, I don't know, at the time I thought I want to I had this technical brain I was discovering through these classes. So we were drawing very technical drawings. This is like before CAD.
Okay.
So you're doing isometric drawings at 60-degree angles, like perspective. You're doing gears and parts and things like that. And what I didn't know was that it's funny how you go down this path and how it helps steer you in your life towards your career direction. And you don't notice it until later. Wow, if I had never done that,
Yeah.
I might not be where I am, might not be a product designer today. So it's like opening the box to, hey, you like technical things. Because as a kid, I was around cars.
Yeah.
I remember taking things apart. And I just was fascinated about what makes this work. And then, of course, I couldn't figure out how to put it back together. But all these things added up. And then after my sophomore year in high school, I said, the next step, now we're doing architecture. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. So for my freshman and senior year, I took like regular art classes. And
Okay.
that's where I got to meet other artists that do more of what I do. And I did a lot more painting and sketching and drawing and just different mediums. And I love mixed medium stuff. I like
Cool.
doing like acrylic paints and pen and ink and mixing things up a little bit and I still have artwork from high school like I kept. And
Nice.
it's cool to go back and look at this. What was I thinking? Got into this is where I got my mind was opened up to Japanese manga and
Okay.
anime, and that actually started Also I got very excited because the detail in Japanese art, like comic books, is so good. And at the
Right.
time, we're talking 1989, 1990, Marvel and see, you compare that to Akira was my favorite manga, and you put them next to each other. Oh my gosh, the Japanese stuff is so much better, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
helped further my styling, the direction of my styling, and more detail. It's funny. I don't know how far we want to go past. If you have any more we want to discuss about high school times, I can get into how I got into college and
Yeah.
that
Go ahead.
direction, but I don't. Okay.
Yep.
So this was a tough thing for me. This is where we get into a tough area. You're done, you graduate high school, and my parents, they didn't know how to guide me after that. They're like, we
Okay.
don't know what kind of school to send you to. We don't know. And at the time, I'm like, yeah, I want to get into comic book art. After high school, I worked for another 2.5 years. I just worked and worked full time. I just couldn't figure out what I want to do. I'm in this weird limbo part of my life. I'm got a girlfriend. I'm working on my car. I'm like, I don't know what to do with my life. And it just really got to a point where I remember getting so frustrated. Parents divorced on my own. My mom's trying to figure out what she's going to do. My dad moved 2 hours away. Still, both parents still very much in my life, but feeling pretty alone. And I don't know where I'm going. So I remember this being a real tough part of my life. And it's weird because just one day this flyer shows up. I don't know where it came from in the mail for the Art Institute of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And I remember seeing a sculpture on it for a sci-fi head bust for an alien. And then there was car drawings and some different visual communication. What is this? And I'm like, I could drive there to go check out the school. It's 5 hours away. And I got in my car and I drove to the school. I called, made an appointment. And I went and checked it out, met some of the instructors, and it was a 2-year school. And I'm like, I don't know what else to do. And I don't have a lot of money. So we could try this. At least I saw a place I could go not too far away. I could actually do this. And when I came back, it was tough financially. My parents and I had to talk about how we're going to do this with the loans. And sorry about the noise. I got the window open here.
No,
I
you're
don't know if you
fine.
can hear. Okay.
No, I can't.
Anyway, long story short, I started going to school there. We had to take out loans. There was no scholarship for me. For 2 years, it was about $30,000 at the time. So it wasn't real cheap.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
that is
for a two
expensive.
year school. And this would have been 94.
Okay.
So I remember getting in my friend's Subaru wagon with a mattress and a bag of clothes, and that's all I had, no car and $200 in my pocket. And I'm going to meet 3 new roommates I never met before, just talking on the phone and moving to this old house and
Right.
somewhere 5 hours away in Pittsburgh. And I get there, I'm excited. One of the roommates' parents showed up and saw where we were living because it wasn't a dump, but it wasn't great. We're kids, we can't afford a lot.
Yeah.
And the 2 parents took their kid out. You're not living here. And I'm like, yeah, it's a bunch of guys in a
Yeah.
apartment. Hey, long story short, first day, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead a little bit here. 2 weeks before I started school there, they wanted me to come out for an orientation to meet some of the instructors I would have and to get a tour of the floors that I would be on. And this was another area where it took I went another direction in my life because I was focused on comic book art, visual communications direction. They took a shortcut through the shop where kids were in there hand making models of cars and products. And I'm like, what is this? There's
Yeah.
these futuristic cars, quarter scale models. And oh, that's the industrial design program. And I remember thinking, I'm like, okay, I'm already really good at developing comic books and my own, I'm well on my way.
Yeah.
So seeing this, I'm like, okay, they're designing and developing products people need. Like people need to buy these things. I can always do the comic book stuff on the side. This is 2 weeks before I'm starting school. Hey, can I change my major? You can do whatever you want. So literally 2 weeks before starting school, I changed it to industrial design, and I'm glad I did. I'm really glad I did that.
Cool. Very cool. Let's back up just a bit.
Sure.
Those 2 years after high school of just working, what type of work were you doing? What type of job?
Yep. So my first job right before high school, I did a paper route.
Okay.
When I was old enough, I think it was 16, I started working at Wegmans. You ever heard of Wegmans
Yep.
grocery store?
Yeah.
Yep, that was my second job. I actually worked for Wegmans. It's in total for 8 years. I started out pushing shopping carts.
Okay. Yeah.
Then just while in high school, I was pushing shopping carts and working maintenance. And it was one of those interesting things. So to go back to high school real quick, and then we'll get back to that 2 years. I wanted to play soccer
Okay.
as well. So they're like, my parents like, okay, you want to do your art, you want to play sports, and you want to have a car and pay for that and work. He's like, how are you going to do all this? You're going to have to get rid of one of these things. So I decided not to play soccer,
All right.
and it's something I got to live vicariously through my daughter. She
Oh,
plays
very cool.
soccer.
Good.
So I worked at Wegmans, and then so those 2 years, I just worked full time at Wegmans. I think I was working in grocery and produce, just wherever, because at that time I'd been working with them so long. The only thing I didn't do was cashier, so I just
Okay.
pretty much worked in different departments, and it was good. It was a good company, good money. It was a good place to
Sure.
work.
And at that point too, is your mental state starting to get low in terms of not knowing what to do, or
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. For me personally, I was raised with Christian values and
okay,
faith, and I remember really relying on that and thinking, praying a lot about it. Just, I remember praying to God, what you gave me this great talent. I don't know what to do with this. I
sure,
don't help me. And it's just, so that's why it's interesting that one day this flyer just shows up and I'm like, who knew to send this to me? Like, how
yeah,
would you even know? Oh, I don't know. Life mysteries sometimes.
yeah. From that perspective, I understand that because I was raised in that same environment. I played soccer, basketball. I was a keeper most of my soccer
Nice.
career, but also too looking at that scenario of you're asking for help, right, from
Yeah.
for God, and you're asking for some direction because you're feeling confined to
Yeah.
do, and obviously you're doing at Wegmans because they
Yeah.
help you out, so you
Yeah.
got to be doing
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
good job, and they're moving you everywhere except for just having to do cashier. Because I'm assuming they're looking at that side of your brain that's using the structure and organization, those types of
Mhm.
things, making sure that
Yeah.
stuff's
Yeah.
stacked on the shelves,
Yeah.
produce is where it's supposed to be, all that. And you get this flyer, and from my perspective, as I'm listening to the story, is that's a God moment for you.
Yes.
That's one of those little drops of an
Mhm.
opportunity that comes in. You had no clue how this even came to your
Yeah.
house,
Yes.
but it did. So that was a bit of a God moment. And with that, did it give you a bit of a relief feeling and a feeling of finally something that looks potential?
Yeah, I think it was like hope because I knew
Yeah,
it's not guaranteed, right?
sure.
Now I have to go to my parents like, hey, I know this is going to cost money. I'm going to have to get loans. And at this time, still not making, my parents aren't making a lot of money and making minimum wage in the
Right.
mid 90s was like what kids are making today. You're making 20 an hour. I wouldn't even know what to do with $20 an hour.
Yeah.
We had to have discussions, and it was my parents wanted to help me, and ultimately they did. Right, there was two loans they co-signed, and then you don't have to pay until you get out. And of course, when I got out of school, I was paying my loans off, and it was tough. But yeah, there was this hope, and it was like I even remember at the time being young. I was in I'd say 20 when this was happening, 2021. I was developing this kind of inner anger
Okay.
because I just getting very frustrated. I don't know where my life's going. I have this gift and I don't know what to do with it. I have nobody to help guide me. And I just felt, and I don't blame my parents. It's just they just don't know how to help me. And I never had a mentor at that age or anybody that could really give me guidance in it. So it was really felt almost like a life preserver being thrown out because I was really struggling, I think, internally, just very frustrated. And then finally being able to do it and go, it was like, this is to me, it wasn't a big school, but to me, it was like I finally get to see what I'm made of,
Yeah.
like, and I remember going there with this attitude of This is my one shot. If I screw this up, I'm done. There is no other chance for me. So I maintained that attitude the entire time I was there. I'd see kids like goofing off. We'd have 24 kids in the first year in the class. And then you would see as time goes on, some of these kids didn't continue. They're just like, you're not serious
Yeah.
about being here. And I maintained an honors average the entire time. Like there
Oh,
was
wow.
partying or whatever. It was a 3.8, 4.0, maintaining that average. I hustled. I
Nice.
worked very hard and some of these things I had learned in high school carried over the technical drawing,
Sure.
especially in industrial design when we were doing product. I don't want to get too far ahead, but some of these things helped me later as I got into my classes where kids were being exposed to this for the first time and like, I don't know how to do this, and I'm breezing through it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. With that anger that's building up and frustration, did you go to church regularly as well?
it was like semi-regular,
Am I
I would
right? Okay.
say. And I remember it at a certain point because of maybe a little before this, I would say maybe like 18, 17, 18. There was a point where I think the divorce was having an effect on my sister and I
Sure.
both in
Yeah.
different ways. My sister was rebelling.
Okay.
My sister she's beautiful. She's smart, very smart hustler, meaning she works really hard. She was very popular, and I got the talent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of the guys would even ask me, how come you're not more popular like your sister? I'm like, we're just different people. But my thing and the way I took it, I remember them sitting down with us and talking to us about the divorce, and I took it as I had blame. Like I took some responsibility for this. What did I do wrong?
Mm.
I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know why it came that I was very quiet. I
Yeah.
didn't say anything. My parents, you sure you don't have anything? Like, nope. Like I didn't know how to express myself. And I don't tell, this is something I'll share because I remember you sharing and being very open. And it's hard to do. But I do remember at one point, right before the whole college thing happened, I remember at one point I was sitting on the end of a bridge
Oh,
thinking
wow.
about things being over.
Yeah.
And because I'm like, what's going on with my life? I don't know what I'm doing. My parents are divorced. My mom's depressed. My dad is trying to figure out what he's doing, and
Okay.
sister's off doing her thing. So it was a very alone kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And when you take on where you feel like this is my fault, part of this is my
Right.
fault, you just don't know. You're 19, 20 years old. I got all these hormones and emotions, and then
Yeah.
you got this, you don't know what you're doing with your life, and it's
For sure.
tough. Kids, I think, in their 18, 21, man, it's a tough time for adjustment and because you're becoming an adult and
Yeah.
you're trying to figure out your way and your place.
Yeah, very much, very much. And I appreciate you being open and sharing that because I think it'll speak to a lot of the audience as well. And the more that they can hear a little bit of that storyline, it allows them to not feel as alone. And I think that will allow the conversation to open up even more,
Sure.
which is what I'm trying to do with this new direction that I'm going in. But yeah, it's completely understandable that you would have those thoughts because literally your world is becoming unstabilized at that point, right?
Hmm.
The parents that were loving and caring and that were the foundation for most of your life are now deciding we're not going to be that, uh,
Sure.
we're not going to be cohesively that
Hmm.
any longer. We're
Yeah.
going to be there, but we're going to just have different places that we're going to be
Yes.
doing this. And I think for a lot of kids, those types of things become internalized just because y- you just think that's the only reason that they're breaking up is because maybe you've done something wrong. Like
Yeah.
it's a self-critical thing for any kid, but I would venture to say it's even more so for a creative who's more sensitive to everything anyways, who has these ability to create worlds, which you were doing with the comics, right? So in your
Yeah.
head, this
Yeah.
story is starting to create of I've got some part in this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can appreciate that. And also too, With you being on the side of the bridge there, what is this? You've come to a conclusion at some point in that
Yes.
time. What is it going through your mind, and what kind of decision allowed you to come off of that bridge?
I think I remember sitting there for a couple hours just thinking about everything. It wasn't like, hey, I'm trying. It's one of those things. I think back. I'm a compartmentalizer.
Okay.
That's how I always was able to survive, and I think that's been a tool. I did get that from my father, where you pack it away, right?
Yeah.
But you can only the compartments only have a certain size, and those
Yeah.
compartments start overflowing. And now what do I do?
Yeah.
And I think this was one of those times where, at that age, you don't have the wisdom and the experience to really think about what the hell you're doing. But I remember sitting there thinking about it, and I think the thing that kind of helped me to figure it out was like, you have this gift. You're meant to do something with this. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake that you got this. And I think for me, I think always being open to trying to hear if God's trying to talk to me. I've been that way since a kid.
Okay.
But it's not a voice. It's just, yeah, a thought comes into your mind.
A
Hey,
knowingness.
think about this. And I'm one of those. I'm a very rational thinker. I like logical, very
Yeah.
logical
Yeah.
thinker.
Yeah.
So I'm analyzing everything, and I think I finally got to the point like, I got this gift. I'm meant to do something with this. My parents have always told me like, hey, this is a gift, and I think that's what ultimately kept me from jumping. This bridge is 400 feet down. There's no, hey, maybe
Yeah.
I'll survive this. There's no, and then I think the more I thought about it, I started chickening out. I'm like, yeah,
Okay.
this is crazy.
Okay.
But the thoughts were there, and it was a long walk. It was long, like a good mile and a half of just walking and thinking and sitting there, and I just wanted to be alone and figure it out. And
Yeah.
I'm really glad I did, because I'm here, I'm
Exactly.
helping other people. I'm creating things and doing what I was meant to do.
Absolutely.
And so I think knowing I had that gift, and I think just having that faith, that for me, I think personally, that's what probably kept me from doing that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's the best answer I could probably give you on that.
That's a fantastic answer because, again, from my perspective, you're running, like you're saying, you're the rational. You want to figure the things out, right? So you're running the scenarios through your head
Yeah,
of, all right, if I go through it, this is a long way down. I'm, who knows what can
yeah,
happen at that point, right? So
yeah.
even within that moment as well, and the way I see it, because I've been there and I've gone over the edge, but there's like little glimmers of hope
Yeah.
that come into play.
Yes.
And when those glimmers of hope start to shine and you get a peripheral of that glimmer,
Yeah.
that starts changing the thought process.
Yes.
And it starts moving those thoughts in a different direction of, okay, maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe this is not the right
Yeah.
thing for me to do, even though I really don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not this thing. And with you having the faith in God and listening for God and being curious enough to listen for God to speak to you in a way, whatever it is, whether it's just a knowingness or a visual sign, or some people actually hear a voice that comes through for them. That's something that's very profound in that there's many people across the creative landscape that are removed from faith and they're removed from a faith, which
Mhm.
you having that growing up, that was instilled in you to be able to lean on that and to look towards that. So again, thank you for sharing that for the
Sure.
audience and to me as well. I appreciate you opening up that way. And I'm glad you're here
Yeah.
because we're
Thanks.
right.
Me too.
We're both here having this
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
So the decisions that we made at those points in time
Yeah.
led us to this place. With getting into the school and you're a freshman and now you're with these other two guys, and then the one guy's parents are like, wait, no, you're not standing here. What is it like in terms of the environmental scenarios? Was there any added pressure on top of doing the schoolwork, or was it just I'm in a new world, loosey goosey, enjoying this?
Yeah, I think the pressure was making sure I could make the rent every
Okay.
month, and we weren't eating great. It was just like, so I got there and I got my first job. I was working at mailboxes, etc. I started, okay, I could walk. I didn't have a car, no bike. So I started working there part time, and then I had a bus pass. I would take the bus. Didn't have a lot of friends with cars, but as the first couple of semesters moved on, I'm realizing like I'm not making enough money. So I picked up a second job. Now I'm working this as well as working night crew. So after I get done with school at 4 or 5 o'clock at the end of the day, now I'm working until midnight at a Revco pharmacy in
Okay.
downtown Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And I'm blocking shelves and straightening and bringing in the new boxes and the pallets and setting them up. And so you do that at night. So when they open up the next day, things are stocked. If I work during the day, sometimes they'd even stick me on security. That was interesting.
Right.
People trying to literally pick up watch cases and walk out with them. I'm like, hey man, you can't take that. Oh, sorry. And they put it down. I'm just trying to go to school here, man. Nobody shoots me.
Yeah, exactly.
I grew up at Corning, New York, as a small town, and then to go to Pittsburgh, which was a designer and an artist, creative. I didn't want to live in the city, but I like the idea that the positive was there's so much going on. There's
Yeah.
so much stimulus happening. And I loved it. I love that part of it. And you get used to it, right? You just find your way to fit in. But yeah, so working two jobs, trying to do your projects. Some days you're like, I have to spend all this money on markers that cost $3 or $4 a piece for a project, or do I eat lunch? I got to get the project done. So we're not having lunch today. And that happened quite often. Got through school, another designer and I were always trying to figure out when you get a little Debbie snack cake for 25 cents, what had the most amount of cake
Yeah.
to it for the quarter.
Yeah.
Hot dogs from 7-Eleven or whatever. We weren't eating great, but
Yeah.
it was like, if that, I think that was a struggle. And at one point I couldn't work both jobs and still go to school. So I let go of the mailboxes, et cetera, job and just focused on working the grocery, the stock boy stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting because that's the thing that you're already most familiar with from working at Wegmans, right?
Yeah.
So you're rationalizing, all right, mailboxes,
Yeah.
boring. I
And I was
understand.
yeah. At mailboxes, et cetera. They were nice ladies, but I'm working with these two older women. And man, they just gave me a hard time. They were nice, but it's all the register. It's not my thing, and you make a
Right.
little mistake. And give me some guy stuff to do. Just lifting things, some easy. I got to focus on school. I don't need to be this like cash register person doing all this mail stuff. They were just very picky, and two old ladies.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just it wasn't working. It wasn't a good chemistry.
Right.
So I quit that.
Right
Yeah.
on. So with doing the Revco and realizing, okay, we're college is a scenario where unless you've got full funding from everywhere, you're having to do it on your own, and you're working and trying to go to school, which with the grades that you said is amazing to begin with, that you were able to keep those grades at that level. And as a design school, did you have to take any kind of like basic math, English, social studies, any of those types, or was it strictly more focused on design?
It it was strictly focused on art and design.
Okay.
And later on, we can get into that later, but it's a little bit difficult because when you don't have some of these art history type classes and marketing and some of these, you've got to figure out a way to pick it up later as you start becoming a professional, which I did. We can get into more of that. It starts reminding me of my dad and how I found creative ways to pick up these learnings. But yeah, it was focused on art and design, which was great. And I had professors or instructors that worked for Mazda and Chrysler. And so
Okay.
they weren't just, hey, we have a talent, we can show you some. These guys were professionals, and there were a couple instructors that really went out of their way to help me because they noticed how hard I was pushing and the level of talent that I was bringing,
Yeah.
especially when I got into the car design classes. And I'm still friends with that instructor to this day. We stayed good, not too close, but we're good friends. And man, that guy taught me a lot. It was amazing. And he went way out of his way. And he pushed me to do things that had never been done in the school before,
Really?
which was pretty interesting. Yeah. So when I did the advanced automotive design, the second rounds, the way you would do it is you would take the two-dimensional part where you would design the car.
Yeah.
You would do concepts, you would work over a package drawing, which is a top view, side view, front view of a 10%, a 90th percentile guy, an engine, wheels, and you would design the bodies.
Okay.
And then when you were done with that, those 11 weeks, you went to automotive design where the next class was you build it, like you hand sculpted the model based off your designs from the previous class.
Yeah.
So when I went to the advanced automotive design and I was taking his design course doing the 2D again, he said, I want you to do something that's never been done here before. And I'm like, what's that? He goes, I want you to do a 1-to-1 rendered side view of the car. And so he went ahead and got the extra supplies because he knew I didn't have any money for that. And we had to
Okay.
get paper large enough. And he stayed with me till midnight to make sure I could do it and get it done, and airbrushed a 1-to-1 scale rendering of my design. It was all, so we gridded it out in 12th scale and
Okay.
then blew it up with, and we used chart pack tape.
Oh,
I think
wow.
we were talking about chart pack tape. Everything was chart pack tape and then airbrushed and filled in. And I've got a picture of it somewhere of me standing with it, and he still has it. I think he rolled it up, and his
Oh,
idea
wow.
was like, I'm going to start showing if you really push, we can do these kinds of drawings. This is what they do in the industry. But I'm
That's,
so glad he pushed me to do it.
yeah, that again, it's so interesting because I'm seeing the different things that you're doing, and it's still going back to high school era
Yeah.
connectivity. You
Yeah.
had the art teacher in high school who was, looking out for you, seeing your
Hmm.
talent, that kind of thing. You've got Wegmans that you're working at. Now you're in college, move over to Revco, and then you get another
Yeah.
teacher
Yeah.
that is looking at what you're doing, recognizing your ability and skill sets, and wanting to amplify that and help flourish that for you.
Yeah.
Those things are very pivotal within a creative's storyline that I like to find and pick out and draw the lines
Yeah.
to it. In doing that, at that point, and obviously you're doing something that nobody's ever done before, did he continue to push you in that direction? Or was it like a one off? I want you to try this. If you accomplish it, cool. We did something different.
Yeah. So this was the him pushing me. I was realizing like, hey, I need to push myself as well, right? I can do more. Don't stop. Figure out how far what are your limitations? And it led into, which put me in a tough spot, but I pulled it off. I did find my limitation. So when I was done with that, so it was basically a futuristic four-door muscle car sedan, but I was also parallel path designing. This is when the Chrysler Prowler came out,
All right.
and
Yeah.
I said, "Man, I'm a Ford guy." And he says, "If you're a Ford guy, if Ford did a Prowler, what would that be?" So I ended up designing two cars for the
Okay.
class where the requirement was to design one. And
One.
I actually developed my own package drawing. So I had to get the specs on the engine. I ended up using the Lincoln at the time, the Lincoln Navigator four can, or not the Navigator, the Lincoln Mark 8 motor, which is in the Cobras, an '03, and I have an '03 Mach 1 that has that same motor. But they didn't have those engines as a performance option yet. But I said, that's the motor that's going to be the future for Ford. And I got to fit this ginormous engine in this 34 Ford-esque futuristic. So I ended up designing that as well when I went to the next course. And the instructor I had for the model building part both times, He was very critical. And I look back and I do understand why he was the way he was. Like, if you missed a deadline, say for even a day, you lost a whole letter grade.
Oh, wow.
If you made something phenomenal and you were an A, if you didn't get it done till the next, it's a B now. So this kind of happened, and what I did was I built a model of the sedan and this hot rod, this futuristic hot rod, and it caused me to lose a letter grade. But at the same time, he told me, like, look, I'm not trying to give you a hard time. And a lot of kids and even my design instructors, that's ridiculous. And he said, let me explain it to you. In the real world, if you're late, you're not going to get a B. You're going to get nothing.
Exactly.
Or you could be fired, or you could be written up. Or he goes, I know it's harsh, but I'm trying to teach you, like, when you're kids, like, you're just,
Right.
so it was one of those things. It was a good learning. I looked at the time, I'm like, this is crap. Look at all the extra work I did, but you're still not on time.
Right.
And it was, so the first time I was taught, like, okay, to be a professional, this is where I first started understanding you can be a creative, but if you're going to be a professional at it, like, it's more than just being creative and making neat stuff. It was okay, but I pulled it off because you
Okay.
had to not only build these models, you had to have presentation renderings that came with it, and you had to photograph. So we had to learn photography because you had
Oh,
to photograph your things for your portfolio. And that was
okay.
something we took very early on.
Okay.
So you had to have a photo board, you had to have your renderings mounted, you had to have the models presentable, done, painted. We're lathing disc brakes and bicycle fenders and wheels, and I mean, it's a lot of modeling.
Yeah.
But I did pull it off. But that's when I learned, okay, there's limitations. Even if you're really talented, a human being can only do so much.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah.
you're getting to the end of the 2 year stint. Are you thinking I need to go on to finish another 2 years at some other place, or was that going to be enough for you at that
Yeah.
point?
So at the time, I knew, like, I want to be a car designer. That's really what I want to do. I want to work for Ford or Chrysler, somebody. I want to design cars. And my design instructor says, just to let you know, to design, you're not going to ever be designing the whole car. Or even
Yeah.
it's rare that you'll get to work on a concept car. Like, he worked on one. He goes, it was very rare situation because, unfortunately, and this is what got me thinking, maybe I don't want to work for Ford, but he said you could spend 5 years designing a steering wheel or
Yeah.
a door handle. Or you're going to be working on center consoles for 2 years. And, oh, really? And he said, that's just how it works. And so at the end of the 2 years, it was, if you want to be a car designer, it was either go to CCS in Detroit
Yeah. Yeah.
or you go to Art Center in California. That's it. If
Yeah.
you want to be the best, those are the schools.
Yeah.
And I remember showing my parents, and I'd had to have gone back for another 3 years because the additional, like, math and
Yes.
history, all those other courses that you would have needed, like, I would have to take it would have to be 3 years, and it's like another 100 grand
Yeah.
to finish my education. And my parents are like, yeah, no. Why don't you just see what you can do with what you got?
Right.
And I'm like, oh, so it was a little bit disappointing, but I'm like, okay, let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
And that's when my dreams of being a car designer, maybe the way that working for a big car company, where that's probably not going to happen. But then I thought about it, like, what if I worked for a aftermarket restyler or designing custom parts? And I said, I think I'd rather do that anyway, because then you're a little more unlimited to what you can do with designing. So it was a tough thing because I interviewed with a couple companies in Ohio. It was like exhibit design, and the pay was like less than what I was making at Wegmans. And
Oh,
I
wow.
remember telling, yeah, it was crazy. And I said, or pretty close to the same. But I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, so I have to get an apartment. I got to have a car, and I've got to pay all my bills and move into the middle of nowhere. You got to start somewhere. I remember it being like 18, 20 grand a year just as a professional. I'm like, really? I think I'm almost making that packing groceries,
Yeah.
and I'm living at home. So a couple of those interviews. And then I did interview with a company in Indiana. I remember Portfolio Day. They brought in it was like they did motorhomes.
Okay.
And I just thought to myself, like, oh my gosh, this is like the bottom of the barrel for a car designer. I'm
Okay.
like, and it's Indiana.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, I don't want to
Right.
live there. So I remember turning that down and they said, man, you have everything this is fantastic, your portfolio. And I'm like, yeah, I just don't want to do this. And I felt bad. I'm like, I didn't want them to think, wow, this is crap work.
Yeah,
It's just not a dream job designing a mobile home,
for
or
sure.
a motor home. So it was back home, moved back home, worked at
Okay.
Wegmans for I think another year and a half, trying to figure out, okay, here we are. We're back more positive, but I got to go back to slinging fruit
Yes.
and working for a boss you're not moving fast enough. And I got this degree now. And I remember him giving me a hard time, pulling me in the back room one day, the produce manager, just because you got a degree and you just don't think this job's very important. I'm like, hey man, I'm just trying to work. I don't know what you want from me. It's produce. And I said, I don't have an attitude about it. I don't know why you're riding me so much. I'm like, it's just produce.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. I'm just doing the best I can. And he had a chip on his shoulder about me and just wouldn't let it go. And I remember that being tough. And I'm like, okay.
You got to figure out how
Like,
to exit out of this one.
yeah, I got to get out of here.
Yeah, that's interesting. Again, I'm seeing another person who's in a looking at you and seeing your abilities and your talents and the fact, okay, now you have a degree along with it. But even though you're
Yeah.
back at Wegmans at the grocery store, the upper echelon management is looking at you and is a bit jealous of what you've done and accomplished. And there, I'm sure he was probably looking at the fact that, I don't know, maybe, and I'm speculating here, but maybe he didn't
Sure.
have a college degree. Maybe he's
Hmm.
been working in that and he's thinking this is going to be my career for the rest of my life. But he sees your abilities and what you've done, and you're like, I know this kid's out of here as soon as the door opens.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe it was one of those perspectives, but I'm seeing it as another person who's looking at you, looking at your skill set, looking at what you're done, and that jealousy is building up. And
Yeah.
it happens many times throughout life where people just they feel the need to exercise that authority position
Hmm.
over somebody, and they feel like they have a bit of power to do that, so they
Yeah.
take it. And I've always found that strange, is because I've been in that position of management and whatnot, and because I worked for a restaurant in here in Michigan, worked for them for 9 years, and I've been the store manager, running everything, hiring, firing, and
Yeah.
I never wanted to be that guy because
Yeah.
I knew what it was like when I first started, and I remembered that vividly. So it was like I understood how much anxiety that new person has coming in.
Yeah. Yeah. Am
And
I
as
going to
a
be good enough?
yeah, exactly. And as an empath, I could feel it too, not even knowing why I was feeling it at that point in time as a kid, younger in my 20s as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are interesting scenarios we have to face and deal with across, our careers.
I wanted it real quick. I meant to mention this earlier.
Okay.
So within Wegmans, something that, again, there were also people that saw this talent that I had.
Yeah.
So during high school, when I was working at the Wegmans in Corning, New York, they would have chalkboards in different departments with
Yeah.
things on it. And they said, hey, do you think you could draw some of your artwork on these chalkboards to help spice up the departments? And sure, I don't know, what are you looking for? We just put prices on things or the things that you can do to make it more exciting. And I said, yeah, do you want to try a department out and see what we can do? So they said, yeah. So I think I remember, and I was still pushing shopping carts and whatever.
Okay.
And man, you know how cold it gets outside. You're
Yeah.
outside for 7 hours and it's 5 degrees. It sucks.
Yeah.
So doing, I think it got to a point where 2 days a week, that's all I did was inside. I had my coffee and they'd stack the chalkboards up and all the departments would say, hey, here's what I need for R10. And I'm telling you, I think I remember there being 30, 40 chalkboards. I
Oh,
had to
wow.
populate these things in 2 days with everything with prices and some kind of cartoon or a theme. And To give you an example, when I started out small and then everybody wanted, oh, I want John doing mine. And like one of them I remember that was pretty cool, iceberg lettuce. And I put the price, and off to the side, there was like a little glacier or like a little thing floating with a penguin on it with his thumbs up,
Yeah.
iceberg lettuce. And he's on a little iceberg and
Yeah.
cartooned it out because I did the comic book stuff and
Right.
people loved it. And I said, the only thing would be nice if you could help me get somebody to clean them before I get them so I don't have to clean them.
Yeah.
But it got to the point where the boards were getting bigger and they wanted more elaborate. And so I had done that for years. And when I left, came back from college, I actually moved in with my dad in Syracuse. And since I had all this time working for Wegmans and everybody knew about the chalkboards I was doing, I think even at one point they had me go to another store. Like, can you drive up here for 2 days and work on theirs? We'll pay the gas
Oh,
because we
wow.
have somebody coming in. It's a brand new store. We want it to look great. And okay, like it's getting a little bit crazy, but I'm not
Yeah,
pushing shopping carts. And they
exactly.
get and they actually gave me a fifth. It doesn't sound like much, but then it was like 50 cents an hour raise was like, oh wow.
For sure.
So I think that's another thing that happened where I worked at produce department after college. I was still doing chalkboards and I did them
Okay.
for him too.
Yeah. He
But
still wanted to ride you.
yeah, yeah, pretty much.
That's cool. That's another added element to your story that's fascinating because again, it's like that kid in elementary school where everybody was flocking to you to like
Yeah,
draw my notebook, do this for me, create
yeah,
this. You can
yeah,
do all these things.
yeah. It's
Do
just
this
older
for me.
kids.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right, you're moving into this space where as I'm sensing, you're getting a bit frustrated with this guy riding you. And
Hmm.
what is your mindset like at that point? And are you asking for signs or are you looking for signs to get out of that into a completely creative field?
Yeah, yeah. So the great thing was the school had people that would send you leads. So
Okay.
that was coming. I was getting leads and they were pretty. There was one woman while I was there, I would meet with her once a week. And she said, is there something else with you like cars? Is there something else you would want to do? And I said, if it wasn't real cars, I don't know, those Hot Wheels or Mattel hire
Yeah.
designers, like that would be very cool. And nothing really was coming up. And then I moved back home and she would still call and stay in touch. Hey, here's more leads if you want to call and check into it. But nothing that was like, yeah, I'm not feeling it. But it got to the point where a year had passed now, and my dad let me know, hey, they're giving me a buyout package from Procter and Gamble, and your stepmom and I are selling everything, and we're moving to Florida. Not sure what you're going to do. Yeah, I'm like, here we go again.
Exactly.
Left alone,
Yeah.
figure it out. Good luck, figure it. That was something my parents would always tell me too when it got tough in school. You'll figure it out. I'm like, I'm not going to make rent. Like, I don't, and somehow it would come together. But yeah, so I ended up moving in with some friends for 6 months. And then a job lead came for the Franklin Mint.
Okay.
And she said, it's not Hot Wheels, but the two guys that work there that run it, the manager and the director, one went to CCS for automotive design and the other went to Art Center for automotive design. And they're great guys. And they're looking for somebody to come and work on the die-cast model car products.
Okay.
And I go, oh, do I get to design anything? You're replicating. And they did a lot of that. And so I was like, oh, I was a little bit like, I'm not sure. But I said the pay was at least 25,000, right, to start. And
Okay.
I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, it's a 3.5 hour drive away. It's not like I'm moving to Indiana. It's Pennsylvania, a little bit warmer than Syracuse, New York. Right? It's south.
Yes, exactly. One state
So
over, but it's south.
yeah, yeah. But I took the interview. I did take the interview and I met with my manager first. And he was a little bit more reserved, a little more introvert, but a nice guy,
Right.
very serious. And we talked a little bit and he's looking at the portfolio and I'm very nervous, right? And I'm like, God, I think this is a pretty good job. This guy's a designer. He said there's some opportunity for designing products like male products like pocket knives and watches. We do Harley themed things, licensed. So you'll get to style that kind of stuff. And again, I'm focused like I want to be a hot rod designer. But you got to be open-minded. That what really got me is when I had my interview with the director. And I'm still very good with him. His name's Rafi Manassian, and we're still texting each other today. And he was I remember him being a very big influence in my career in a lot
Cool.
of ways. He was at the time, he was like that young professional, slick back hair, California guy, and just great attitude all the time, just very creative and knew how to positively motivate. That was
Nice.
the first time and I got a taste of a manager, somebody and almost like a mentor to me. It was the first time I felt like, aside from my instructor in school, the two-dimensional card design, he was kind of like a mentor. But Rafi really mentored me in a way where he helped me to think differently about things. Like, don't be closed-minded. Like, I know you like what you like, but anyway, when I had the interview with Rafi, I remember he's kind of looking at the resume and he just closes it and he pushes it to the side and he goes, look, you're super talented. You're going to get the job if you want it. I want to start by telling you that. So I don't want you to be nervous.
Okay.
He goes, if you want the job, we would like to have you. I just want to talk to you about what do you like? What do you like as a person? What are you into? He didn't care.
Oh, wow.
He already knew. He could look at it and he knew right away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's all this kind of stress melted away and we just had a great conversation and he started showing me some things that they had done, like projects they had worked on with Franklin Mint, and oh, this is pretty cool. There is room for designing. Oh yeah, he goes, I have a vision for this place. We're going to do some things with die-cast cars that have never been done before. He goes, I think you could be the guy to help us with
Cool.
that. I'm like, oh, okay. So when that was done, he goes, I want you to go down to the museum where we have all the products and just go walk around. I'm going to go talk to Roger. Roger was my boss and he was the manager. And we're going to talk. But he says, we're definitely going to offer you the job.
Okay.
So I remember going down there and this was where I had goosebumps. It was one of those moments where I knew I was supposed to be here.
Yeah.
So they had developed a design on the side when they weren't working. And it was this beautiful eighth scale model of this very futuristic 30s like clothes. It just a Duesenberg chassis,
Okay.
30s Art Deco. It was gorgeous, just gorgeous. And they fabricated like a whole story with artifacts and drawings from relatives from the 30s that were designing this back in the day. And then they replicated it in diecast later on. But they had this model, it was huge on display with renderings, and they tried to make it look period correct. And I'm just looking at this, look at the creativity and the talent that these guys I'll be working for have. Oh my God. It was just I remember it blowing me away. I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I ended up taking the job and I just had this feeling of I know I'm supposed to be here. Like I knew right away, this is it. This is gonna be my first job. That's when I got to travel a lot. So it was documenting cars. That's how my job started out.
Okay.
If you're going to make a replica of, say, a 1940 Ford, you're making phone calls, you're on a team of people, you've got to find a perfect replica, like a original, untouched. And
Right.
you have a photographer, you're doing sketches and drawings, plumb bobs, and you're measuring the body and giving data to send over to overseas to the engineers to actually hand sculpt the models.
Right.
That's how it started out for me at the Franklin Mint. But where Rafi really came in with the creativity was the first job we worked on together, which I love, and I still have I don't know if I posted anything on Scott's site about this, but we took a regular 40, was it a 49 Ford Woody wagon,
Okay.
and we made a period correct, like 50s custom, like the
Nice.
50s or 60s. So it was like, instead of it being like the dark, the red, the brown metallic with the wood grain, we made it like a seafoam green. We put
Okay.
surfboards in it, surf stickers in the
Nice.
windows. Still had wide whites, but the rear was up a little taller and had we did a little surf guy emblem and we put it on this in the 60s or 50s. They had that kidney bean shaped stuff going on.
Yep.
That was the base, and it had sand and a little seashell button that you'd push. And I played Jan and Dean Surf City. And
Oh, cool.
so I got to design all these details and learn how to communicate the technical side of exploded views, hand drawn exploded views of how it would assemble together. And so that was very successful. And that's what helped me to do more design work for the product side and less photo shoot guy, just documenting cars.
Very cool. Very cool. With that, you mentioned that you got to do a bit of traveling and whatnot. Did you get the opportunity with that in terms of inspiration to have to go out to California and see what the surf culture was, or were you just pulling from other sources?
It was just pretty much stacks of hot rod magazines
Okay.
and figured out. And I want to, this is something that was a teaching moment for me, a
Okay.
learning moment. I'm sorry, a learning moment for me, teaching moment for Rafi. So another project similar to that, we took a 63 Impala, and this had never been done. It was an industry first. I want to make a lowrider out of this. We're going to
Okay.
work with Boris Vallejo.
Nice.
He's gonna do the trunk art. And no way, because I knew I was a big Frank Frazetta fan.
Yeah,
Boris
same here.
Vallejo, yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, I look at it and go, oh man, let's do a hot rod. I don't like this lowrider stuff. And they're like, no, you don't understand. I'm telling you, it's gonna be awesome. He's very pumped. Here's a stack of lowrider magazines. I want you to take the time, go through all this. I'm like, okay. I'm like, whatever. We should be doing hot rods. So I start looking through them and I'm reading and I'm looking at it and I'm like, it was like a aha moment. Wow. Look at the creativity in this.
Yeah.
That's where the first time in my life I learned you don't have to own it or build one, but you can appreciate what went into this, the culture behind it, the detail and the love that these guys put into this. And the more I got in, I was like really pumped. I'm like, okay, how do I, what do we do? What do we
Yeah.
build? And it ended up being one of the very successful model. And from that, companies like there was a couple companies started making smaller 64 scale lowriders. Lowrider diecast started coming out after that.
Yeah.
And I remember he told me Boris Vallejo saw my renderings. I did all the pinstriping and the triple tone colors and the
Yeah.
gold. And he saw my rendering. He goes, "Oh, he draws cars very good," or whatever his accent was. And so it's neat. Holy cow! Boris Vallejo saw my stuff, and he did the trunk art. And we did this beautiful woman with a dragon. And I
Nice.
remember showing it to General Motors, licensing the. Yeah, we're not putting women on. And she wasn't nude, but it was
Sure.
skimpy. They're
Yeah,
like,
it
we're
was
not
his
put.
style. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not putting that on our product. So we had to tone it back a little bit, and we got it to work. It was a very cool project, but that was for me that's where I learned like, hey, you may not like a certain genre of something or a certain culture. It may not be your like jam, but what can you learn from this and start taking these learnings and apply it to the things that you like, which
Exactly.
helps you adapt it and come up with something very unique, maybe innovative or different that no one's ever tried before. And so again, these things happen in life, these little moments where you're like, I know where I learned to change how I thought about things.
Yes.
Very specific moments I'll never forget.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a huge thing for the audience as well, the listeners, the creatives of the world that are maybe hearing this as we're talking. The ability to not have tunnel vision,
Yeah,
to allow yourself to experience other forms of creativity or other forms of art within a genre can create inspiration that is literally changing the direction of a historical period of
yeah,
development.
yep,
And so I want all creatives that are listening to this to have that in mind, that don't be so focused on what you want to do specifically
yeah,
to
yep,
where you shut yourself off from the
mhm,
potential opportunity that's
mhm,
out there in other
yeah,
areas as well,
yep,
which it's fantastic. And then you get a compliment from Boris.
yeah,
Come on,
very cool.
right?
Yeah,
That,
Yeah. And when you're young, you need that. And hopefully in your youth, it's one of those things where you don't, it's an opportunity for you to learn and grow.
Yeah.
And if you don't learn and grow, you become very stagnant or you plateau out. You got to, as I've learned through my career, you got to keep reinventing yourself. You've got to keep learning. I'm going to be 54 in June, and they've been introducing AI tools as not a replacement in the company, but if we don't learn these things and at least take advantage of them in some aspect of our job, we're going to get left behind.
Yeah.
And the thing that's interesting here that my director noticed, he goes, you're the one that's the most positive and willing to learn these and take, and the younger designers, we're afraid this is going to replace us. I'm like, no. I was like, yeah, I'd prefer to keep doing things the way I'm doing them, but if I don't change and adapt a little bit, at least from a conceptual
Yeah.
standpoint, it's about speed in our industry.
Yeah.
This is it's like it's not replacing you, but I don't want to get into a whole AI thing because if my preferred method, I'm actually going back old school and starting to sketch more.
Yeah.
But the learning is that keep learning things, learning tools. This is like a supercharger in the industry for what we have to do here, but it doesn't mean you have to this is the replacement for what you do because I
Exactly.
really am an advocate for there's no way you can replace the creative mind of a human being. It's impossible. I think you can emulate certain things, but
Yep.
they'll never replace that creativity. It's impossible.
No, exactly. And again, too, that's my perspective with AI as well. Just what I've seen it do and what it's pulling from. And the way I'm trying to look at it from a perspective of trying to give encouragement is the fact that, look, this is a machine and it runs off of data. So
Mhm.
unless you're putting data into it, it's not going to run. But
Yeah.
the thing that I would ask people to look at is if you want it to run from a standpoint of ethically working, ethically assisting, you've got to put that right
Yeah.
information into it so that it responds
Yes.
that way.
And that's how it's designed, honestly. That's how
Yeah,
it's made to work. Yep.
yeah, very
But
cool. So
yeah.
you're at working at the Mint, doing these cool things, making this phenomenal thing. You get a compliment from Boris. Is your mind thinking, okay, I'm gonna stay here. This is gonna be where I want to be lifelong, or are you starting to look at other potential opportunities?
Yeah, I think so. I was with the Franklin Mint for 3.5 years. And I started noticing, so Rafi had left, and the company was owned by two very rich people. The Resnicks, if you're in California and you understand who owns the land out there, I think they're involved in the water somehow,
Okay.
the way things are working with water out in California.
Oh, wow.
They've actually popped up in the news a little bit, like connections to this. But
Okay.
the Franklin Mint was a play toy for them. And yeah, you learn pretty quick. Rafi would always advocate to make the product correct. But then they let him go because he stood up to her and tried to defend the product to make it right.
Oh,
And she didn't like that. And so he was gone not too long after. But he said, that's okay. I'm looking into other things. But I started seeing kind of the writing on the wall. And then they actually had a pretty big layoff. And it made front page news in the paper. They laid off 300 people.
oh, wow.
And out of, I think there was about 1,500 people there. So
Okay.
that's huge.
Yeah.
And a lot of the creatives were like, oh, they had a lot of super talented people that like artisans, like there's a couple guys I remember that worked on the pocket knives, like everything hand drawn. There was
Yeah.
computer something, but whole sculptors and
Right.
just illustrators. Just the talent was like unbelievable,
Yeah.
just incredible. But they let go of most of those people, and I was in that layoff as well.
Okay.
We got a severance package and whatnot, and I think I was already in my mind like, yeah, I want to move on to something else, and so got the severance package, and then I think it was maybe a month out. I had done some freelance work. I'm trying to think who had told me. hey, they're looking for freelance. It might have been somebody through the Franklin Mint that said, hey, they're looking for somebody to do some toy drawings that the Mattel is out in New Jersey.
Okay.
So they had me come in and, hey, we want to do this new rescue line of vehicles and trucks. Can you draw? I'm like, I showed them my car stuff and they're like looking at each other. Holy crap. Okay. You're the guy. So they gave me
Nice.
some crazy project to come up with these rescue vehicles. They have working features and lights and different things. And said, what can you do in 2 days? I'm like, oh my God. So I did a bunch of concepts, drove back, brought them in. And I said, one of the things that's lacking in the toys is this detail, hyper detail, I was calling it. So things like flares and bolt details and textures, even on the bottom, draw chassis details and things. And they were blown away. And I think it was like 20 minutes in sharing the concepts, and they just stopped and said, do you want to work here? Do you
Oh,
want a
wow.
job? Yeah, I would love a job here. I think, and that day, literally, they had paperwork drawn up, made an offer. And I'm like, it just like instant job. So I was like, holy crap, I'm still getting severance. So I'm double dipping. And it was pretty exciting because I'm going to work on Matchbox now. You're going to lead this whole product development for all these rescue vehicles, and you're going to be the guy.
Okay.
So the pay was better. Then I was like, okay, it's a bit better.
Yeah.
Benefits were better, but it was exciting because finally I'm designing vehicles. It's
Right.
rescue vehicles, but I'm going to make them exciting. I'm going to make this stuff really cool, not just standard looking boxy plain trucks. I pushed the envelope on it, but it didn't take long because 6 months in, the Tyco RC, the director over there said, yeah, you're coming to work with us. So I got pulled. They stole me from that team, and the nicest people, and they were really bummed. But I had developed the line, it was doing great, and they could pass it to another designer. And they coined the phrase Matchbox ness,
Okay.
meaning there was a styling language that I had developed for the product line that they carried on all that Matchbox stuff.
Nice.
And funny enough, my design instructor from the Art Institute that I became very close with,
Yeah.
he got a job there and I was working with him, and he was designing all the 1/64th scale
Oh, wow.
stuff. So we got to work together for a while, which was pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That is very cool. All right. So you're into this second job. You're doing the thing that you've been wanting to do for a while.
Yeah.
What is John's social life looking like outside of the design studio?
When I moved into the apartment that I was living in at that time, I'm still very close friends. One of my best friends, he lived in one of the other buildings across the street. We were both car guys, always
Okay.
working on our cars. I had a 5 liter Mustang coupe that yeah, it's probably not, I wouldn't say this is a good example for people, but I was going into Philly street racing this car, not for money, just there'd be 300 people down there. I'm not even
Right.
kidding. It was a big scene. I think it was an excitement about it, but I was really into my Mustang. I'm dating somebody, then that doesn't last, then date another person. But I was really focused on my career.
Okay.
And my friend Jesse, we just worked on cars together. And then ever since then, we've been very close. We even tried to start doing our own business on the side, like putting cars together and designing parts and different things. It didn't really take off, but we had a lot of fun just working on our cars together. And super close friend. We're still very tight to this day, still stay in touch. He's in Philly.
Cool.
So I've been to the car scene when I'm
All right.
not working, and still trying to figure out. I think I'm at that point in my life, though, where I'm getting old enough where I'm like, I want to start a family. I want
Okay.
to start finding the right person because I'm doing all these great things, and my career is finally taking off, making pretty okay money, and I want to start sharing this with somebody. I want to find that person, and it's tough. The problem is now at this point, I'm trying to think what age I'm at. You're in your late 20s.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't really go to the club because these are like 21, 22-year-old.
Right.
It's getting a little creepy. I don't think I fit in here. I'm not an old guy, but these are kids.
Yeah.
I'm like in my 27,
Yeah.
26, 27, 28.
Yeah.
So it's a weird, like, where do you go? So
Right.
you just meet people you work with. I dated another designer at the Franklin Mint for a few months. She was in the doll department.
Okay.
It was the only time I ever dated a creative, and we had a lot of fun, very similar things we would like to do.
Nice.
But ultimately, I did meet my wife while at Mattel. I met my
Okay.
wife and we started dating. And that I think I knew second date, I knew right away this was going to be my wife.
All right.
Knew right away. And it's funny, there's that part of me just trying to find your way. This is this tough journey being this young designer. You got a little bit of emotions going on. You've been fighting your way through things for so long. And one of the things that's tough too, being a creative, I'm sure you've experienced this in that journey. There are people that want to kind of take advantage of this talent that you have. And
Yes.
like you won't necessarily get paid really what you should be getting paid, or we'll take care of you later. But it's just
Right.
people like what you have. They want you to do it, but they don't want to necessarily pay for it. Or it's hard to describe. It's just, you just know I should probably get more for this. Or
Yeah.
so anyway, and even in dating, it just, we all go through different experience with dating, but I wasn't finding the right one. It's always a control thing. When we're married, you're not doing this anymore. You're not it.
Right. Exactly.
I'm just not going to change who I am. This is me. And that'd be the best advice I could give for anybody. Find someone to let you be you unapologetically. Just be yourself. And that definitely, it was my wife that I ended up marrying. And you just sense it. Like,
Yes.
I'll tell you real quick. It's a quick story. And she's, don't tell this story.
No, go
But
ahead.
the second day, so we went on a date with my buddy Jesse. We double dated, went to a movie. We saw, what's that? Vanilla Sky? Was
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
horrible?
Exactly.
Horrible movie. Horrible.
Yes.
And we're in the theater and she's with me. This is our first date. And he's got some girl with him. And the whole time we're just like Mystery Science Theater 2000, just making jokes. And at first people are getting mad, but then the movie's so bad, they're turning around laughing at us laughing. So I'm like, great, she'll never go back out
Right.
again. But we went out to eat anyway. Long story short, she said, hey, let's go Christmas shopping tomorrow. So we did. We went Christmas shopping and I took her to a nice place to eat dinner. And this is funny enough. This is what the trigger was. It's her. She's like, I get it, but I don't understand. But I went to use the restroom. I came back and she had taken a roll, cut it in half and buttered it for me and put it on my plate.
Oh, wow.
And I know it sounds a little like, what's a big deal? But
Right.
when you're used to dating people what are you going
Yeah.
to do for me? Always spending money on you, do things to impress them and make them happy. And you're like pretty secondary.
Right.
It was one of those, wow, like she thought of me. It's something I'll never forget. I don't know why it captured me, but
What I'm gonna pull from childhood, I'm gonna
yeah.
pull that God moment
Yeah.
to that point. Pull that God moment all the way up to there because
Yeah.
she did something that showed you a side of her that wasn't selfish. It
Hmm.
was in response to wanting to make sure you were just as comfortable and
Hmm.
just as nourished, literally, right, as
Yeah.
she
Yeah. Yeah.
was. So
Right.
that's that God moment scenario. And that's
Hmm.
why
Yeah.
you experience
Yep.
that. I don't know why this is happening, but it's happening.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that's how I'm seeing it for you.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And those are huge
Yeah.
blessings for creatives to be able to find someone who understands this is in you and
Hmm.
you can't just shut it off and do something else.
Yeah.
If truly in you and that's the thing that's driving your purpose in life, your wanting to move forward in life, that desire to move forward in life, that's fueling that. You
Yeah.
can't just turn that off. And
Yeah.
so when you find somebody who wants to just be with you for who you are and allow you
Yeah.
to be,
Yeah.
that's gold.
Yeah. It
That's gold.
is. So she's a blessing. I definitely found the person I was supposed to be with, and we were best friends. Like any marriage, you're not going to 100% perfect all the time, but
Yeah.
we share common goals in life and share the same faith, and we're always a team. on everything, whether we 100% agree, we always come, hey, this is what's best. This is what we're going to do together. So we can always come to that. It's a great, and one of the things that made me real happy is I was always able to provide that stability for my daughter and her life, that you're going to have two strong parents that are together, there
Yeah.
to support you, anything you want to do, because that was something my parents did the best they could with the situation and were supportive, but to
Yep.
have two parents together in these times, like
Yes.
divorce is,
Yes.
was it half? What is it? Half the marriages at least?
Yeah. At least.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
amazing.
good thing. Yeah. I think it's a rare thing. We're going to be celebrating 20 years this
Oh,
year.
congrats. Congrats.
Yeah, pretty exciting. But yeah, so she's been with me in most of my career path, and she's been there for me through all the things. And of course, she comes home with her things too. And okay, your turn. You heard my crap yesterday.
Right.
We're each other's therapists to a point. We
Yeah,
can
for
only
sure.
help each other so much.
Yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
beautiful though.
but Mattel, you'll
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
Mattel, the great thing is I still look in my career as far as the work that I did was a dream. Like the stuff I got to do, it was a dream job. It got to a point, the culture there got so toxic that I was getting angry, coming just frustrated. I'm like, man, these people, just the way they talk to you here it was very rough, very difficult sometimes. People be cursing in meetings and just ripping into people, and you're finding out later one director's cheating on his wife with another director or
Oh,
VP,
geez.
and there's a lot of crap going on. You're like, what? And the tough part was that I'm killing it. I'm doing all the TV items, and I finally went in and said, hey, I've got this new manager who's not a designer, who wants me to come and sit next to his office to kind of watch me like I'm this little kid, so
Right.
that they see us having too much fun in this collaborative environment. You wanted to be very controlling.
Yeah.
Again, here's another figure
Yep.
coming in that doesn't understand
Yep.
a creative, and I don't like this. And I had to go to my director and say, hey, I don't need this. If this is the way it's going to be, I'm done. And he's like, whoa, because I'm leading all the top projects and he wants me on that.
Yeah.
So we got around that. But I said, also, I've been here 3 years and I've been all these successes. I haven't gotten a raise. I want to be senior designer. And then
Yeah. You have to
you
push
get the
back.
whole push. Yeah. And they just kind of water it down. You need to do more of this. And I'm like, okay. So eventually they gave me a little something, threw another $6,000 at me. Okay, it's something. But
Yeah.
anyway, I stayed another year and a half. And I ended up leaving the company.
Okay.
And I just had, it was five years there. And I said, I got an opportunity for another company. And I remember the director, Joe, not talking to me the whole 2 weeks, just not a word.
Well,
I'm like, I tried telling you.
yeah.
And then you throw a couple $1,000 at me, and I got to work for this guy that doesn't get it.
Yeah.
And so I left. People were seeing it. They were like, you're leaving, aren't you? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Cleaning out my flat file. Late at
Uh,
like 5:30. Somebody walks in. What are you doing? Oh,
yeah.
that's getting full. You're
Right.
quitting, aren't you? I'm like,
Why
nah,
are
I
you
don't know what you're
taking that
talking
home?
about. Yeah.
Right on.
But it was a great job. Worked with a lot of talented guys. The work was so much fun. It was like Hot Wheels on steroids, because Tyco RC, you were building stunt vehicles. Like as far as your imagination, we were cobbling. We were going to the shop and making things, and great creative process. I met guys that were also very talented. And funny enough, after GMP, they all, well, a lot of them went to California, because what happened 2 weeks after I quit,
Uh-huh.
they announced they were closing that branch. And
Oh.
some people were getting severance, and then they were offering opportunities for some to go to California if you want to keep your job.
Oh, wow.
And they're like, how did you know? How did you know? I'm like, the bonuses kept getting smaller every year to none. And if you're listening to the business, what's going on, you can see the writing on it's not doing well.
Yeah.
Funny enough, a few of those guys came back, and my director, Joe, and they all went to Crayola.
Okay.
And that's how I ended up getting the Crayola job, because I was working at GMP, and they said, man, you're wasting away doing this. You should come here. Benefits, pay is killer. And Joe worked with me, who was the director, and he knew what I was capable of. plus
Okay.
3 other designers were there. You got to come here.
Yeah.
Sorry, skipping ahead a little bit, but that's how the Crayola thing came about.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. Was there any lag time in between that transition, or was it a smooth move right away?
No, I put in my notice at Mattel, and then I took the job at GMP. Funny enough, my friend George,
Yeah.
he got a position at Franklin Mint. Wasn't a designer, but he was a model builder from back in the 70s. Very creative. He couldn't draw, but the imagination this
Oh,
guy
wow.
had was incredible.
Yeah.
And he knew how, basically, whatever he said, whatever you draw, John, I can make it.
Yeah.
And he would hand build these prototypes. Like that's where things like the Christmas truck with the tree in it and the toys and the graphics, like he was, it was another person who innovated in the industry and elevated the product level to the next. And there, that's one thing I'm very excited about. Everywhere I've worked, I've got to work with some super talented people, and I learned a lot.
Yeah.
So George ended up leaving, and then he started freelancing for GMP. And he said, "Hey, there's an opportunity. They want to hire somebody to come work for GMP. Would you consider moving to Georgia?" I'm like, "Heck yeah, warm weather." The pay wasn't a lot more, but it was a better, more of a bump. And I was able to move to Georgia with my wife. And one of the it's probably a story, it's a whole nother open story for another day, but my wife also had a daughter when we met who was about a
Okay.
little over a year old,
Okay.
and we ended up getting married, and I step parent adopted her. The guy was never really
In your life.
involved, so for me that was okay.
Yeah.
So we moved to Georgia, and while there I had a career with GMP for about 6 years, almost 6 years.
Cool.
And it was one of the places where, again, I took what they had and I innovated the product, took the product to another level. We were doing things, they're still using my ideas to this day. Funny enough, they're finding
Wow.
concepts that, and here we go again. Tom, the owner of the company, loved me. Hot rod guy. He had hot rods. I had Mustangs. We got along very well.
Yeah.
Tom loved me. I made him a lot of money. I literally, with my ideas, made this guy millions of dollars
Yeah.
over the years because they would share the financials. And I'm like, yeah, I developed that whole idea myself, marketed it, put together the presentation, the tooling costs, everything. But his general manager was like another guy jealous
Oh,
of,
man.
because he would want to hang out after work and work on car things. I'm like, yeah, I don't have time, or it just didn't work out. Right. And I think he didn't like that. And then that guy, for 5 years gave me such a hard time. Actually, at one point, I went to SEMA. You remember the images I shared from SEMA of that
Yeah.
green car with Sam Posey?
Yeah.
They were there showing at SEMA, and he walked Tom over and said, "Look what John's doing. What did he say? He started putting thoughts in Tom's head. He's gonna abandon you. Look what he's doing. He's gonna leave the company," and just
Oh,
whatever
man.
he said. Because when I got back, Tom said, "Hey, I need you to come in my office. And he's the manager sitting there just with his arms crossed. And Tom's just ripping into me about, how could you do this? I feel betrayed, and you're doing all these things behind my back. I'm like, Tom, I did all this on my own time using no company resources. Long story short, I think he was trying to get me fired. And my buddy George, that knew this guy, Mark, he called me at one time right before this. Are you okay? I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, I'm talking to Mark, and he's saying there's problems. And I'm like, what? And that's when I found out, like, this
Man.
guy's trying to fire me.
Yeah.
And he's working Tom against me, my friend George against me, and he's a manipulator, big time manipulator. And I learned, now I know the score. I'm like, I'm just trying to do my job. And
Right.
remember, 5 years of this company, I never got one raise. I made this guy so much money.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to him in this conversation. And I said, Tom, first of all, I did this on my own. I paid for everything myself. And I said, if we're talking about who's taking advantage of who, you took an idea that I had published in Popular Hot Rod magazine, made a die cast of my concept, sold them, made money. How much of that did I get? Nothing. And And I'm looking at Mark, do I get a percentage of that? That was my idea. You took and made
Right.
money, like a lot of money.
Yeah.
And because collectors were also car guys, they would see the magazine like, you guys, because we had tooling for this car, you guys should tool that. So we did. We spent money customizing it. Anyway, long story short, I said, I make you all this money with my talent, my abilities, working with sales too, but look at what I've been doing for you for so long, and what am I getting out of this? And no
Right.
raise, no nothing. It turned the table on the whole conversation. He started getting upset. He started apologizing to me. And because at one point, it's like, maybe you need to go home and think about what you're doing.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, yeah, it was like, I'm on the verge of getting fired. Like, this guy over here is manipulating him. I have a family, I have a
Right.
mortgage. I'm like,
Yeah.
what is this guy doing? So I told Tom, anyway, once I said, defended myself and explained some other things from my perspective, he ended up giving me a hug. I'm really sorry. Mark walks out of the room and leaves pissed off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Tom, I'm not trying to screw you, but I have to do this stuff on the side because I only make this. We're barely making it. I'm living check to check. I need to provide for my family. Once he understands that, because his family was very important to him.
Yeah.
So that squashed all of that. I ended up working there for another year. And then finally, I had this opportunity with Crayola. And
Really.
this is for the first time in my career where I'm like, okay, I'm going to be smart. I know what I'm worth now. And they talked to me about the job, and I said, I've got to make this. And I think it was like a $35,000 a year pay jump
Oh,
for me.
wow.
And I want senior designer. I'll show you my portfolio, my side work plus all my professional. And they gave it to me. I got what I wanted. And it was for the first time as a designer. I knew my worth. I knew how to market myself. And I just wish it hadn't taken that long. This
Yeah.
is why I want to mentor. And I'm really trying to help this young designer at work. I want to mentor so much because it took me so long to figure out how to market myself, how to figure out how to be the professional designer I need to be so that I can get what I'm worth, to understand my value and my worth. It
Absolutely.
just took me a long time to figure that out. It's tough.
It is. And I think many creatives fall into that cycle of working for a company, excelling because that's in them. They want to push themselves, go as far, have these creative ideas, but yet the company doesn't always compensate that. So I really appreciate you telling that perspective and telling the story like this because it's allowing the listener to be able to see a trajectory of what you've done in your career, how you've made the move,
Mhm.
how you pivoted, and then also too
Yeah.
how you've gone up against the opposition, so to speak, within the
Hmm.
environment and still coming out ahead
Yeah.
and persevering through that to get to
Yeah.
the other side.
Yep.
That's a beautiful thing, man. It is.
Yeah. Just be yourself. As long as you're yourself and you're honest, you can lose, but in the ultimately, I think you end up winning, right? Because you
Yeah.
find out it's like anything. If you're in sports and you're not that great, you learn, hey, this isn't where I'm meant to be. I'm meant to do something else. The best term I heard, I got a new manager at where I work now. The guy's great, so much experience working with designers and engineers and managing them. Something he said the other day, I told him a challenge we're having where trying to pitch innovations to our overseas engineers. They just want to have all these theoretical discussions about why it won't work. And I'm
Right.
like, why don't we stop saying no and say yes if? But what he said we need to do more here is fail faster. And I
Right.
think that's something you can use in life is fail faster. Don't be afraid to try things, but learn faster. This isn't working. Move to something else.
Yes.
There was a great thing he said. I'm like, I'm going to use this.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I 100% agree with you. Fail fast and fail often. So
Yeah.
you get that in your system and you get comfortable with it to the point that it doesn't allow fear to raise to the top when you need to make a change.
Yeah. And that's something in my career I wish I was better at. I've stayed places longer than I probably should have. Unfortunately, at Crayola, I wanted to leave 3 years earlier, but
Okay.
my daughter was in school and she was just starting high school. And my wife's, I don't want to have her switching schools. And I said, I'm not happy here. I don't want to be here anymore. I work with great people, but I'm not my I'm being pigeonholed. I'm not being grown. I'm not being supported. My manager was good, but that same director I had at Mattel, his thing was, I want to get you somewhere where I know you're going to be able to get this done, and then I'm going to put you there, and you're just going to stay there. And I know that it gave him stability, knowing this is just going to get done, and I don't have to worry about it. So you're almost kind of like a mushroom, right? You're just over here in the dark, growing and or not growing. You're just there.
Yeah.
So I just wished I would learn to just make the decision. It's going to be tough for her, but we need to move on. When I'm going, Mattel was the same way. Probably should have left a little sooner, but I think things happen for a reason in life too. There's timing to things,
Yeah, absolutely.
but yeah, Crayola was a really great opportunity for me. It was there 8 years. Probably should have just stayed 5. But again, I with some of these different there you work with people. This is the first place I worked at a bigger company where you're working with people that probably lucky to have those jobs. And
Yeah.
they're making big decisions or putting out suggestions that you have to execute on. Yeah, this isn't going to work. But because of the culture, we have to try everything. We can't just be negative. And I'm like, I'm not being negative. I'm just being a realist. I'm being
Right.
realistic here. I already know this won't work, but if you want me to waste the time, this is corporate. Okay, this
Yeah,
is corporate
exactly.
life.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, a lot of that, but my manager, still another one, very good friends of this day. My friend Rizal was also my manager. He was very much like Rafi, where he knew how to positively motivate and lift you up. He made you more important than him. You got the premium desks by the window. He took a cube over here, no
Right.
window. Everything he did was about pushing us to the front. He stayed in the back. And I learned a lot about, hey, someday I'm going to be possibly a manager. I want some of the things that he does. This is how I want to be,
Yeah.
which played a very important that really played a very important part in my job with Bestway, because I was able to learn a lot of learnings from him, helped me figure out how to manage there, how to get at least start. Because I'd never managed a team like that before, even though it was small, but I had to build the team. But anyway, he was a very positive influence in my life. We became very close, still talk to him to this day. We text. And
Nice.
thank God for him, because he went to bat for me so many times. I think there was a point at which, again, here comes this somebody in management doesn't like you for whatever reason. You're not funny enough, or you're not the guy. It's just you don't click. And
Yeah.
he was able to maneuver things and go to bat for me and advocate. You have this superpower here, and you're not even using him to the fullest extent of his ability. So he was able to move things and get me in another category where I could prove myself. And
Excel. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And so thank God. It's funny. You always feel like you might have this guy over here who is definitely not in your corner, but there's always somebody there, okay, to balance it, right?
Yeah.
Luckily, I've always had that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen it throughout the story today. And those things are amazing. They're such blessings that we don't always
Yeah.
think about or are able
Yeah.
to recognize, but they are. They're always there. And then too,
Hmm.
with your faith, again, those are those God moments. He's dropping these people into your
Hmm.
life that are looking after you still, even though you're experiencing some rough and difficult scenarios. You got these
Yeah.
people that are going to bat for you, that are still looking out for you, still know
Yeah.
that you've got this amazing talent, and they want to see it go
Yeah.
further, go further.
Yeah. Yep.
So ultimately, you decide to leave Crayola.
Yeah. Another layoff.
Okay. So,
So they played it up like it wasn't a big layoff, but corporate wise, the corporate office building, it was 16%. There were director level people. I was the only designer let go. There were creatives let go with the research and development department. But it was, again, it was one of those where, okay, I was here for 8 years. After 5, I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore. And it was great because I remember for the last year I was there, I had a terrible boss. Failed marketing guy, became a product development director. And he says, anybody can be product development.
oh
Anybody,
my
you just
word.
need to have, you just need to have great ideas. And I'm like, and I told him in this meeting in front of the other designers in our group, and I said, I don't know if I agree with that. I said, because the guy who developed the intermittent wipers for Ford, one of my favorite sayings of all time, he said, a great idea does not always make a great product. Anybody can come up with great ideas, but then when you have to execute it
Yes.
and get, I call it the meat grinder, the product development and production meat grinder,
Yeah.
cost, feasibility, manufacturing,
Yeah.
everything. That's when you find out how good your product is, or hey, we got to kill it because it's not working, or hey, this is a great idea. And he didn't like that.
Right. For sure.
And there was another designer who I'd worked with at Crayola was there, but because he was like the guy with the jokes and funny and he liked him,
Yeah.
they kept this guy who would come out of meetings. I effing hate this place. This place. He's nope, this guy's ironclad somehow. And I'm like, but I'm the guy. You're going to let me go. That's fine. But I
Yeah.
remember being in the exit interview with HR and this manager, and I'm just like smiling. I'm like excited because I've been telling my wife, if we can get to Arizona, like I'm going to be there. I've got my guy. We're going to build SEMA cars together. We'll be like close and opportunities
Yeah.
he's you're really the HR guy is you're really taking this well. I'm like, oh, dude, I can't wait to get out of this place. I'm just excited. And he's what? I'm like, I'm going to Arizona. I have no idea. I don't have an interview. I have nothing. I'm like, I don't care. It's springtime. I got freelance lined up.
Yeah.
So we're walking out, and I'm just all happy. You're gonna be okay. I'm like, oh, dude, this is the best day of my life right now. And we're walking out. There's people in the cubes that are being consoled. They're crying, like, oh my God, my job. They're freaking out because they think they're going to get laid off. And
Yeah.
I'm walking out and they're like, well, thanks. You were really easy. I was like, yeah, I'm texting my wife right now. Hey, I just got laid off. This is great. And she's, what? What are you talking about? I remember getting in the car and I actually was sitting there thinking, thank you, God, because I didn't want to be here anymore. And I said, you open the door, you close this door, and then another one's going to open it. And I learned from the past, like every time I left one job and went to the next, it was better than where I was. Everything was always better. So when they tell you the grass is, because employers will tell you, you always think the grass is always greener. Look, no place is perfect. But for me, at least, the blessing has always been like, yeah, it has been greener on the other side every single time. So don't be afraid of that. And of course, I got the interview with the current employer that I'm with, and I got the job. And the other potential job that almost came out of one of the freelance side jobs that I had done, I almost was getting an interview with Zach Brown, the country singer.
Oh, wow.
Because when they're not touring, they actually are doing bespoke products like Shaq would call them up. I want a double wood door hand carved for my house. And
Okay.
20 grand later, he's got this one off bespoke door created by his woodworkers.
Nice.
So in some of the projects I was involved with, Kurt Busch, there was a truck project we were working on. It went to SEMA, and Zach Brown was part of that with Ford. And I had done these interiors with this distressed leather seat inserts.
Nice.
And he was just like, who's this John McBride? I don't have a John McBride. But just the way it worked out was he wasn't ready to have me come for the interview, and Bestway was like, we're giving you an offer.
Right.
And so I'm like, I got a family. I've got to I can't wait, or I'm going to lose this offer potentially.
For
So
sure.
I
For sure.
took the job with Bestway.
Excellent. I want to highlight something again for the audience
Sure.
because I experienced this early on in life as well. And you're talking about that great idea does not always translate to a fantastic product. When I was growing up, my mom's sister, my aunt, was an industrial engineer. She graduated from the University of Tennessee, got her master's, all that kind of stuff. And she was working for Levi Strauss at the time as an engineer. Don't I believe she may have been the only female in
Wow.
that department and at that level. And so she was getting flack from everybody just because she's the
Uh,
only female, but smarter
yeah.
than any of them. But she would always see me drawing in the living room if we would be at my grandmother's house on vacation or whatever, because both sides of my family is all from Tennessee. and
Mhm.
most of them are down there still. But she would see me drawing and be looking over my shoulder, and she would say to me, "Now make sure there's not too many parts to what you're
Hmm.
drawing,
Hmm.
because eventually somebody's going to have to reproduce that.
Yeah.
So if you're not thinking of that when you're creating something, as fantastical as the
Yeah.
idea may be, if you're not thinking about how it's going to be put together
Yes.
afterwards, then it's going to be a problem."
Yep.
And I've always implemented and just that information stuck with me so much throughout my career, whether it was in the fashion industry or the jewelry industry or
Yep.
any of the industries. It was always make sure that it's simplified enough with the cool factor still, but simplified enough to be able to be producible.
Yep.
And I just wanted to reiterate that for the listeners and the audience because you were saying it and I could relate to it, and it's been gold.
Yeah.
That kind of
Hmm.
information is gold that will carry you far
Yes.
across
Yep.
your career.
Yeah. The other part of that too is thinking about the consumer experience because at this point, when I had this last manager, I'd been working in the outdoor toy category now for 4 years. I knew it very well. I had done like dozens of consumer tests with each, like the chalks and the paints and how to make toys that enable kids to do things that you couldn't do without that toy. So if you had a box of chalk sticks, you can only do what you can do with a chalk stick, right? But if you make a toy, like I came up with a spirograph design that looks like the size of a hamburger that
Okay.
you put a template on and you push it and it indexes like a pen and it goes click and you trace it. And as it clicks around, and it was like $10. You got all these stencils. And what it did was empowered a kid to make 3 foot diameter spirographs very simply, not using these awkward gears. And because you see those products, and I said, that's the problem. No kid can do that. It's not possible. I would have a hard time doing it. So my innovation was how do you make it easy for a kid like
Yeah.
a 4 or 5 year old to be able to do that? And we were able to do it. And I remember even getting a thumbs up in front of everybody from the CEO because we actually, to illustrate how it works, we hot glued it to a big piece of black foam core and did half of the output around and glued it on so you could get an idea. And like, holy crap, 3 foot diameter spirographs that are perfect. And it was customizable and you could
Nice.
sell it for $10. And that's the hard thing. So the consumer experience is making something that the consumer can do or enhances, and that's how you're innovative. But they got to be
Right.
able to do it. It's got
Yeah.
to be something they want or it solves a problem.
Yeah.
Otherwise, and that's one of the things I learned a lot about at Crayola was to market better. I worked with a lot of marketing people. And when I first started out, I learned a little bit with Rafi. You can't just say, isn't this idea cool? We should just do it.
Yeah.
Let's spend tens of thousands of dollars because it's a cool idea. Why
Right.
is it cool? Oh, because it's cool.
Yeah, it's super
So,
cool, but we got to explain that to
yeah,
the audience.
yeah, you got to sell it. So I learned a lot about that, just being better at marketing. This is where I was getting back to that point. I had to learn these things through experience, learn how to market ideas better, think about costing. And my technical side of me really helped me to do explosive views and think about how things went together and mechanically. To this day, my therapy, being away from a screen, is going in the garage and wrenching on a car because I
Okay.
got a simple mechanical non-screen related thing that I'm using a different part of my brain
Yes.
because people are like I'm pulling motors and transmissions and doing different things but it's not being in front of a screen. I need that therapy to get because I come up to my office and when you work remotely 3 days a week,
Yeah.
this is the same office I have to try and come up here and do freelance work. You're like, ah, I don't want to be here. I already spent 8 hours sitting here. I'm
Yeah.
going to spend another 4 or 5 until midnight. I don't want to.
Yeah,
It's
for
tough.
sure.
You
No,
got to
for
find
sure.
breaks. Yeah, you
Yeah.
find those breaks.
And two, you're switching, like you said, you're switching to a different part of your brain.
Mm.
It's allowing you to feel some ease because my dad
Yeah.
was a mechanic for good part of my years. So I've been around the car and automotive industry here in Michigan in more than one way. And so that switch from the electronic to the analog, so to speak, that allows you to recharge and gives you some
Yes.
calm, some peace, some
Yep.
moments of sanity where that
Yes.
electronic device that's just buzzing in a sense all
Hmm.
the time is static against your central
Yeah.
nervous system.
It's true. The only electronic devices is a phone, and I might put it on Pandora or something to play music. That's it. No, no laptops, no TVs, none of that stuff. Just grease and wrenches and
Some
heavy
smell of
stuff.
gas, maybe, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So,
So with this new opportunity, knowing that you weren't going to be able to work with Zach Brown because he was just the timing just wasn't working right. With this new
mhm.
opportunity, where does it take you?
So Bestway, this again, there's a lot of learnings, good and probably not so good. So when I applied for Bestway, the job was going to be a $10,000 pay cut for a senior design position. And I worked through a recruiting company called Creative Circle. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
I have not.
They were okay. I pretty much had to do all the work myself. It's kind of, it was almost like,
Ah,
can you get out of my way and let me, you're not really, you're just in the way. I didn't say this. They were nice, but it was just like, okay, I'm telling you the questions to ask them.
right.
You're supposed to be going to bat for me, like getting me more money or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, I went to the interview. It went well. As I'm walking in, I see another guy coming up. I'm like, that guy also must have interviewed. But it was interesting because I'm not in a suit, but nice slacks, shirt, shoes. And the CEO was there, and my boss, who was the VP, they're sitting there in beat up t-shirts and jeans and like just laid back. I'm like, oh, I'm overdressed.
Right.
So I apologized to him. And there was like a mix up in this whole thing with the creative circle where they didn't even see my product development, my whole career of product development portfolio. They
What?
had my resume and my side view or my side automotive stuff. So they just think,
Oh
oh, it's
man.
just this guy. Something didn't make it to him the way that they wanted to deliver it through Creative Circle. I'm like, oh, these guys are screwing me up, man.
Yeah.
So I said, luckily, I got my laptop. I have everything loaded on here. We'll swing it around. And they're like, oh, wow, we didn't even see any of this stuff. And I'm like, anyway, long story short, the interview went well. They wanted me to come back for a second one. Funny enough, so this is in Phoenix, right? And I'm living in the Easton, Pennsylvania area. Luckily, my buddy Chris, who we do the SEMA cars, he said, I'm going to have you come out and work for me for a month and a half. I'm going to pay you cash and you're going to help me build this Corvette. Like you're going to
Okay.
learn how to fiberglass. And it was a 66 Corvette, big block convertible side pipe car. And I'm doing
Right.
all the mechanical stuff. He's the paint and body guy, but I got to do the interviews while staying with him here in Phoenix. So I let them know, hey, if you're going to have me come back for a second interview, I'm only going to be here for another 2 weeks. And so try to get me in. So they got me in for a second interview. It went very well. And then I'm like, okay. So my whole time, senior designer, here's the pay. I'm like, cool. This is cake. The problem is it's an inflatable company. I'm like, what am I going to be designing? It's like graphics. I can do graphics, but a week, I didn't hear anything, don't hear anything. Finally, after a week, and I was still in Arizona. I get an email saying we're offering you the position of design director for Bestway. And I'm like, director? This is not senior designer. And then the pay is still 10,000 less than what I was making at Crayola. I'm like, wait a minute, this is like 3 levels higher. And so I'm like, what is going on? I call Matt, the VP, and I'm like, what's going on? Well, you're not really like the director. You're going to be directing the project. So is it a project lead? So
Right.
what I'm learning is that Bestway USA is a company that's part of a larger Chinese owned company that's global,
Okay.
worldwide.
Gotcha.
And they are developing products specifically for the US market here. And now we've doubled from 40 people to about 130 in
Okay.
that time and change building. So anyway, to give you an idea, there's like 35, 40 people here. And there's no process for the design.
Oh man.
And you got salespeople and the CEO randomly coming into one designer. They got one designer, industrial designer, fresh out of ASU. She's young, first job. I come in there and, but anyway, I'm talking about this position and it's no HR. It's just, I'm just very confused about what
Right.
this position is. I'm like,
Yeah.
senior designer, I know what that is. We want you to mentor Angie and help her and help us get people here. I'm like, this is sounding like a realtor. So there's a little bit of like bait and switch, I feel like going. I looked at it this way. I'm like, okay, it's a small company. The pay, I'm not crazy about it, but the benefits are really good. I'll prove myself
Right.
and show how great I'm going to be. And we can work that out later. That's not the way to do it. I will just tell you, and everybody that sees this, do not do it that way. You say, no, I went for a senior design. I was thinking like, I'm going to have a director title, and whether it works out for a long time or not. And in a way, it did help elevate.
Yeah.
But long story short, what happens is the company felt a little bit like a startup, but it wasn't. It's a big company. They got the budget. So I end up helping Angie and I start creating the process. We can't have salespeople just walking or demanding things. There has to be design briefs. These need to be provided by product managers, not salespeople, not the CEO coming in. Even I got hit by the CEO after the process. He would come in and just sit in a chair like, John, and he's an Italian guy, really smart guy, super smart. He's like, I need miracles from you. I need a miracle. I'm like, I'm already loaded, man. I'm like, it's me and this other person. And I shouldn't even, I've got project after project, loads of projects. I'm like, this isn't really a director. So long story short, I'll just cut to the chase on it. 6 months in, I prove myself. They're really happy. Sit with the CEO and Matt. Okay, we're going to give you the HR part of this now. So you're going to be a director. I'm like,
Oh my God.
ah. So we got to get people hired. I've got to help with that. Job descriptions. Meanwhile, there's two designers handling 300 projects, graphics, structure design, inflatable, injection molded, like just like Wild West, literally.
Oh wow.
So we get another designer in. I'm trying to think who was the first design. We hired this person. I don't want to pigeonhole. So I'll just come out with it. We hire this person, and the way we hire, I don't care your background or who you are, what you're like. I'm like, if you're talented and you can do awesome, no
Yeah.
problem. I have no issues with anybody coming here. If you're badass, like I will push you, like my man, I will put you out front. I will support you and do anything I can for you. And I got to the point even where this person in the beginning was working out great. They were doing pranks, filling my office up with inflatables. So I built this rapport that was very positive. It was going very well.
Right.
So we hired this person. It was as a transgender oriented person. And I don't
Okay.
mean this in a negative way. I would just say I didn't care. I was like, we're all different.
Yeah.
We all have different backgrounds and you're very talented. We have a test procedure. We give you a product to try you out to see if you can do the skills. They did great. And this has happened with somebody else too. It doesn't matter what you're from. It's just when you find out later on they're talented, but they bring this toxicity to the department. In
Mm.
other words, long story short, the insubordination with this person and
Okay.
things got very difficult. It was the first time I had to fire somebody. And the reason I bring this up is this was very difficult for me to do. It was very hard for me. I felt like I failed this person. I never had to fire anybody before. And it was
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
hard for me. I hired them. I felt, did I not do enough but I knew I had 6 pages of, I would try and work with them. And I don't know how many verbals I can give you. And HR is helping me understand and learn because I'm like, I've managed people on projects, but not HR level stuff.
Yeah.
But it was very hard. And I didn't have the support of my VP, my boss. It kept this nice talk. It'll be fine. And But at one point, when I have 5 people lined up coming in at my office one at a time, hey, you got to do something. This is horrible. Like some of them are wanting to quit because of
Yeah.
this person,
Yeah.
just the toxicity in the conversations. And so finally, I just did it. Like I said, this has got to happen. And I went to HR. And I remember it being a very tough situation. But the situation, and this is will lead up to why I'm not the director and I went to
Okay.
principal designer, because I had an opportunity to make a choice
Gotcha.
and I chose to step away from this.
Okay.
At the time, I wasn't feeling I got it's like only come to me if you have a really hard, bad problem. Everything else, you should just be able to figure it out. That's fine. I've got experience. I know what I'm doing. But that's when I realized if I do have a problem, I'm not getting the support that I needed.
Yeah.
So ultimately what happened, I ended up hiring 3 other really great designers that are still with the company, and one ended up becoming my boss currently,
Okay.
because of me stepping away from that position. But what happens, the company is also growing. There's a lot of things happening. The process I'm helping with is getting more fine tuned. And 3 years into the company at Bestway, they're buying a new building, we're expanding, and it's getting to the point where if I'm doing 55 projects, 60 projects a year, I'm a director. I have to manage, I think I'm managing 4 people now. I hired 3 of the 4 myself. So I hired two graphics designers, another industrial designer, and it was getting to the point where I'm doing 2 to 3 times the amount of work that any of my designers are doing,
Oh,
plus
wow.
the process, plus, and I would start leaning on the designers a little bit. Hey, you've got to take on more. And they would all say, whoa. And I'm like, my industrial designer, I'm like, you haven't even done an injection molded project yet. I'm doing all of them. I need you. That's why I hired you.
Yeah. I need you to learn
So,
how to do this.
and I can tell you, it'd probably be a longer story for another time, but I think there were things happening behind the scenes that I didn't know about.
Okay.
And I don't, again, without knowing, there's things that you can tell. You say you're an empath. I don't think I'm that, but I'm a very observant person. I
Yeah.
like to listen a lot,
Yeah.
and I'm very good at looking at things like big picture and piecing things together and going, okay, something's off here. Ultimately, I ended up having a sit down conversation because it was getting to the point where I'm getting crushed, like literally being crushed by because I'm a director and a full-time industrial designer. There's no way you can do 50, 60-hour work weeks.
Yeah.
Everybody would say, there's John's yellow Mustang in the parking lot before anybody else gets in. And it's the last car that leaves at night almost every day. Everybody in the company knew.
Yeah.
And I'm working weekends. I'm getting phone calls Saturday. Hey, Walmart needs to see some kind of Dragon Island. Can you have this by 7 o'clock tonight? I'm out grocery shopping with my wife.
Oh my
I'm
God.
like, okay, hon, we have to leave. I have to go home and start doing this right now. And so it was very stressful. And I think it was like end of 2020 and COVID on top of all that. So all of a sudden I'm managing these people and we're all going to be working from home the whole
Right.
time.
Yeah.
I will tell people this. I don't mean this in a bad or negative way, but managing can become like babysitting. I will
Yes.
tell you.
Absolutely.
And I loved managing. I did enjoy it a lot, but you got to make sure that you are supported by the people that you report to that back you when you need to. I don't know how to say this. You've got to be able to push your team. And there are
Right.
times where we've got to hustle. We've got to put in a little extra. I
Yep.
can't be the one always picking up the slack all the time because there are other responsibilities and the expectations that I have to hit.
For sure.
And when you don't have that, it's difficult. But I even had an opportunity, or not opportunity, I had a situation working from home, and I know what it takes to develop this certain product. And I gave the person 5 days, this designer 5 days. And when they showed me what they had been working on for 5 days, I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, I could have done this in 2, 3 hours. What have you been working on?
Right.
So nicely, I'm trying to talk to this person. They got upset, started crying. What do you not think I'm not working? I thought you were my friend. I'm like, oh my
Oh
God.
my God.
I'm like, okay, I got to figure out how to diffuse this. Bawling.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was as nice as you could be. I wasn't upset. I just said, this is what I expected. 5 days. I know because I've designed these many times. I know what you should have, at least more than this. But so I had one of those situations I had to go through. And I'm like, okay. Anyway, long story short, we get to this point where I'm sitting down with the VP. I knew it was coming. And I actually had recruiters reaching out to me like, man, we have this director role. And I'm like, no. I'm like thinking back to this, were these, hey, gods, hey, I'm giving you a
Right, right.
life raft and you're not jumping in, man. Why aren't you leaving? It's
Yeah.
work from home. And I don't know. Saying long story short, I'm talking to the CEO. We're sitting there talking about how things are working out. And I said, look, I'm not getting the support I need. And I can't be working on 60 projects. 60 projects. I'm like, yeah, 60. But we went through some things, but I think they had already made the decision that they knew what I was producing for the company was the innovation I'd brought, the talent. I'd hired these people. I think some things had been happening in the background with my one designer and my boss and one of the product managers where they've been talking about maybe John could step down to a different role and we want to put this guy in.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay. So when we got talking about it, they asked me what I thought about this person being the manager. And I said, this person has skills as far as and experience in being organized, creating process. The problem I have is this person's young and they don't have the experience, not even close to what I have of actually producing success,
Yeah.
several hundreds of success and experience doing like what I've done. They have some, but it's not even close. Right?
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
taking somebody from not even a senior design level, just product designer, and you're going to promote them to design manager.
Yeah.
I said, you better be really sure about what you're doing. So we agreed that I started thinking about, yeah, I don't think I want to manage anymore. I'm going to step down to a principal design role and take on that role and focus on myself because I just really think I felt this separation happening with my team and myself where rightfully so, I wasn't able to give them the time that I would have liked to give them. But when I'm doing the amount of work that was on me, how could I? It's impossible. It was just, I literally was waiting for this to happen. Something's going to happen. It has to happen. It's just not, I could feel it.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it was like March of 21. And I'm like, yeah, I was waiting for this. So
Okay.
what I try to give as an example, and my boss was like, well, wait, whoa. And I said, I wasn't getting the support. Pat was the CEO. Pat, I'm not getting the support I need. This has been happening for a long time. I had something in my back pocket as an example, but I was like, I can't throw my boss under the bus. But it made me look bad because when I fired this person, they brought a lot of negativity into the team and everything. And I had tried to say, we need to make this happen quicker. It didn't happen. So one of the things the CEO said to me after I was cleaning out the person's desk as they're leaving, he goes, are you okay? And I said, I'll be fine. It was very difficult. He goes, my advice is the next time you have a problem like this, need to have it happen faster. And I'm sitting there waiting. Should I say it? Like I went to my boss 4 times and HR, and he said no. We had to have a meeting. Let's sit down and talk about our feelings. And I'm
Right.
like,
Right.
I just need to get the work done.
Yeah.
I'm overwhelmed, and this person is making it difficult. So I didn't say anything. That guy still doesn't know to this day. I tried to, but I didn't have the support. And seeing how all this not getting support, being basically not set up for success, was
Right.
a big issue. Long story short, I moved to principal design, and the way they handled it was not good. I felt betrayed by my company a little
Sure.
bit. It was very hard to swallow, but I said, I'm going to get to focus on what I'm doing. I felt like I worked so hard to try to make this happen. And I just was like, good luck, swim or sink.
Yeah. No, exactly.
And to this day, I'm glad. And it literally took, so the director, they moved him right to director 6 months in. I'm like, of course. For the first couple of years, though, I could see his learning curve was very big
Yeah.
because of not having the experience that I had. And he's trying to direct designers and all this process that I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I wasn't reporting to him. I said, I'm not reporting to him. I'll report to the VP. I said, because this guy, he's not ready. Like how's he going to manage me?
Yeah,
How?
exactly. Yeah.
He doesn't even have any experience. So anyway, we did that for a year and a half, and then the VP decided we're going to have you report to the director now, and she didn't support me either. It was
Um,
basically like no meetings, no one-on-ones, no nothing. And and I was still working, doing very well, but I was doing things, funny enough, like innovations, and some of the processes that I was doing with the factories have become processes that he adopted and is using today. It's because it would start out with like, why are you starting these certain projects without a brief? It says, because I know we do these every year. The product managers are going to need innovation in these specific areas that we should just already be working on, and we can be early. I just don't understand how you can work with no brief. I'm like, I know we're going to need to do 2 water slides every year. When I first started here in 2018, they said every year we're going to. So why should I wait months for a brief when I can have them in the bag? And the product managers loved how fast
yeah.
I was. But anyway, long story short, I will say this. He and I have had lots of discussions, and we've been working together. And for the last year and a half, he's understanding that I haven't been set up for success several times now.
Yeah.
And even in the role I'm currently in, we've had discussions where I said, why don't you stop dictating to me what you think it should be? Let's have a collaborative discussion about it. And let me provide my feedback and insights from my experience. I
Yes.
want to help. I just want to help. I don't want to tell you how to do your job, but there's things you don't know. Just listen to me. If you
Right.
don't choose to use it, that's okay. But at least you gave me an opportunity. Maybe you can learn from me in this way, and I can learn from you in other ways.
Yeah.
And I will say it took us 3.5 years to get there, but we finally are at a point we're having lunch together. We can share things. We have a very good conversation now. And instead of dictating processes like the metrics and what it takes to do a high complexity injection molded projects compared to this project, I can tell you, like, you're going to need to spend this much time sketching. You're going to need this much time for research and mood boards and working with the PM and a meeting. And then CAD's going to take you probably 40 hours,
Yeah.
40, 50 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
It's 100-hour project. And he would go and do his math and he's like, oh, you're right on the money. So he started listening to me. What it led to was him presenting to the company. It helped him create tools to say, we need more resources. We need more people because we have X amount of projects. And John has helped me understand the metrics behind several projects. So he's learned, I've learned from him and he's learned from me. And then we come to, let's work together instead of just telling me what you think it should be and guessing. So now I have a new boss. He comes in with a lot of experience and feel very positive. So I feel like, great, we finally got to where we're working well together. Like, you're going
Very
to
good.
focus. He's still the director, but now we have a manager. That's how far we've come as a company. So we have a
Okay.
director. The manager is going to manage new product development. He's going to focus on ODM and big picture innovation
Right.
direction for the company because there's so many people now. I think we have 7 or 8 designers
Okay.
now just in the US.
Cool. Very
So a
cool.
lot of product managers. We're working on 300-400 projects,
Dang.
high level, like very high complexity stuff.
Yeah. That's a lot. Wow.
Oh,
With
yeah,
all that going on, I know the cars is your kind of your therapy thing.
sure.
Is there anything else that you're doing to take care of your mind as well while that's going
Yes.
on?
From being a Gen Xer, right? Grew up with, you hear the comedians joke about this all the time. Okay, I'll give you a great example. When I was a kid, I was playing Little League, typical Gen X, right? Situation. I got hit with a fastball to the head,
Okay.
knocked me out on the front, on the plate, knocked out cold, right
Oh
in the face.
man.
Half inch higher, I would have lost an eye. And my dad jumps the fence, picks me up, brushes me off, and says, "Take your base." And the ump's like, "You need to take him to the hospital."
For
So now
sure.
we know what's wrong. We know what's wrong with me now. I got hit by a fastball.
Holy crap, you got
So
TBI.
I know. So there's always this, I have a lot of that from my dad where it's, you think you can handle everything. And I think this helps pull some of these things together. That's how I have the compartmental thinking.
Yeah.
I'm logical, I'll figure it out. And
Yeah.
you try to handle stress a lot of ways. And the old school way is like, hey, you know what? if your arm's falling off, just duct tape it back on and keep going.
Yeah.
I was raised that way. You'll figure it out. You just got to work harder. And I've always had less to work with than would be optimum that would make life easy. You just creative and you find a way to survive. I've
Right.
learned whether in my career, you got to go in survival mode, you got to figure it out, and you just put your nose to the grindstone and push harder. But what I will tell you is something that's happened to me in the last couple of years with this current job and all that stress that I've been dealing with, different personalities that I'm struggling with and
Yeah.
not feeling set up for success. I will tell you, it's another thing I'll share. Right before this whole position changed, for the first time in my life, I started, so end of 2020, I had my first anxiety attack.
Okay.
I didn't know what it was. Now, my wife had been going through it because I think there's a hereditary thing,
Right.
and she's been getting counseling and help a little bit. Nothing crazy, just she understands it. And
Yeah.
I'm going through this, and I'm like, no, this can't be this. And I don't believe in that. It's all in your head. Just this wrong mentality of thinking that you were raised to just deal with it.
Yeah.
Just deal with it. Figure it out. So since then, I think not so much recently. The last couple of years have been pretty good, but I've probably gone through 3 or 4 pretty good anxiety attacks
Okay.
where I'm shaking and I'm just like, I don't even know what's happening.
Yeah.
And I'm shortness of breath and I'm like, I feel like I'm going to collapse. But I remember that first anxiety attack, they had given me some project down from the CEO to pull off something. And oh my God, I got 2 weeks to do what? Design 6 products to
Yeah.
CAD to get when I'm like, Christmas is here and what am I working by Christmas?
Yeah.
So I remember my boss calling around 3:30 that Friday and I was getting ready to go on my 2 week break. And he goes, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm not okay, Matt. I'm going to tell you, I am not doing good." I said, "I think I'm having an anxiety attack. I've never had one in my life." He goes, "I want you to take it easy. Don't open the laptop. Don't just take your time off," which I said, "That's exactly what I'm doing." I hung up the phone and I slapped the laptop down and like, "Give me a beer."
Yeah.
But after having a few of these issues and it's dealing with stress from work,
Yeah.
currently I've been talking to my wife about it. We have insurance for it, but I think I want to start seeing a counselor.
Okay.
But again, this is very new to me. I don't know how to go about this. I can start looking up people that are in our system
Sure.
for
Yeah.
health insurance, but
Yeah.
one of the difficult things for me is again having my Christian faith is that I think it's important that I find somebody that has at least an understanding of that or
Yeah.
maybe has that
Yeah.
because every one of my decisions in life still has to have that thinking in mind. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's just
Yeah.
that's just the way you can't have your faith one day and then not have it the next day in certain things. It doesn't work that way.
Sure.
So that's what I'm going through right now. I'm doing much better, but I still have these things. Like I have this psychological baggage that I haven't really dealt with it yet. You know what I
Sure.
mean? It's just there
Yeah.
and I don't even know what I need to be honest with you. So I have to make a step forward with this.
Yeah. I'd love to give you some options. We can do that offline
Sure.
once we get through this. I for sure can help you out with that. And especially
Yeah.
knowing that you want to keep the faith element applied. And I
Yeah.
can help walk you through that as well.
Sure.
But yeah, that's the reason I asked that question because I was feeling that building up
Yeah.
within you, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're not even saying I'm starting to have panic attacks, but I'm sensing,
Yeah.
I'm feeling this panic. Like that's way
Yeah.
too much stress.
Yeah. You're only getting, I still work for this company and I think it's a good company. I think the people there are amazing. But when I started with the company, we didn't have a lot of what we had. We had no process. And I helped build a lot of this. But I think I understand work for a small company like GMP and you're wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah,
But the expectations from this company are extremely high,
yeah.
very high. Even at one point, 2 years ago, same manager that I have, we actually had a discussion like things like this are being said to me. And I've been speaking to people above me, and some people think that you're not providing the value that we're paying you for. And I'm like,
What?
what are you talking about? Yes, he actually said this, man. He goes, I can tell you who they are if you want. I said, all right. So we were having 3 one-on-one conversations every week, and it was getting worse. And finally, I just said, all right, you know what? I'm going to throw myself out there. I said, gloves off. I said, with all due respect, first of all, I've been with this company for 5 years, 4.5, 5 years. I've been set up for failure twice in two roles,
Yeah.
clearly. We
Yeah.
can get into that. I've already had the VP tell me for the director role, oh yeah, you clearly were not set up for success. Like, why do you help me? But I said, I started out making $10,000 less than I was making at Crayola as a director doing two jobs. I
Yeah.
get a raise back to where I was 2.5 years in. It's 50, 60-hour work weeks, doing way more. When you got this position, everything was handed to you. I built it all. And I said, on top of that, let's look at inflation. The money I'm making today, which is the same money I was making in 2016, is 21% value, the 21% lower. So it's like I'm taking a 21% pay cut
Yeah.
because of the inflation. I said, I've already done all the research.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there, his eyes got really big. And I laid out a few other things. And he goes, I didn't think of it that way. I'm like, oh, yeah. And
That's
it
how-
changed. It's almost like that conversation. I had to turn the tables, and you are not looking at it from my perspective. You are
Right.
not understand. And after that conversation, it changed things. It caused him to take a step. But these are just a few things. So this anxiety, I'm getting pounded. I'm killing myself for this company, and the appreciation is not there. I don't feel valued. I'm not being set up for success. Where's my career going? This is where all this is starting to head. Everything's just converging on this really negative area, and all these things I'm like juggling. Plus, my side work is getting less and less because the amount of time and stress that I have to put into this company and what's expected. Like, I'm actually ducking low on my side work because I'm like, I can't even mentally handle more. Plus, on top of that, I have a family, I have a daughter. And
Yeah.
so, anyway, this is where it all was going, like into 22, 23 a little bit, but it started changing because thankfully, and I'm very thankful that my manager started talking with me and listening to what I was saying. You need to listen to me.
Yeah.
It's why you're failing, and it's why I'm failing, because you're telling me what to do and I can't hit these expectations. It's
Right.
impossible.
Yeah.
I'm being, my legs are getting kicked out. So anyway, there's so much I don't want to get into all of it, but there's so much that I was handling, and I'm thankful that things are a lot better. But
Yeah.
there's a little bit of an effect that I feel, and I don't really want to say this, to anybody.
Sure.
I don't hold grudges, I guess what I'm saying. But these things happened to me that affected my livelihood,
Oh, absolutely.
my opportunities, growth
Yeah.
have been just pushed to the side, and
Yeah.
it
And
sucks.
it
Yeah.
does. And honestly, I can see it just across the entire story today. There's been these
Mm,
instances where you run into these scenarios where y- you've just been you're put in a position to fail just because the other people don't have the capacity to think the way that you have, which has got you in the places you have, but it's also allowed you to excel. It's those things
mm,
back where you were working at Wegmans and they say, "Hey, can you do a sign for us?" And then you've got 30 signs for all these multiple different departments, right? Because in you've already got this accelerated thought process to where you can see, yeah, I can do this. I can help you look sexier, better to the public, right?
mm.
We can make this amplified. We can take this up to 10, 11, 12. We can turn it up for sure.
Yep.
And those are the things that creatives have to navigate within just the traditional working world, even if it's at a creative company, you
Sure.
end up having to work with people who don't have the same attributes that you do. They're put in a position of a management position where they may have some organizational skills, but potentially they don't have the people skills that it takes and the understanding to know that, hey, my creatives think differently. So I have to
Hmm.
look at them differently. I have to understand what their process is and how to make sure that process is nourished so that it's
Hmm.
on time, so that it comes
Yep.
in at budget, so that it comes in
Yeah.
with them not being overwhelmed.
Yep.
So for the
Yep.
creative listeners out there, just be aware and be conscious of when you're getting into a position, it may be fantastic, maybe the thing that you wanted more than anything else, but just be cognizant of how the management is treating you, is working with you, and don't stay in that too long to where it overwhelms you to the point
Yeah.
of break.
Yeah.
Um, because it can happen and it can happen rather quickly in a lot of
Yes.
instances, especially
Yep.
nowadays where everything is about how fast it can get to market rather than how great we can make it.
Sure.
Um,
Oh yeah.
so I understand immensely where
Yeah.
the frustration is there, the anxiety built, like literally your body is saying to you, because a fantastic book out there, if you haven't heard of it, it's called The Body Keeps the Score.
Hmm.
And what it's all about is your body literally reacting to the environment you're in, and it's telling you, it's like that God moment scenario. It's telling you ahead of time, bro, you got to take your pedal off the gas because we're not going to make this jump.
Yeah.
It's literally telling you ahead
Yeah.
of time, this isn't sustainable.
Oh,
This
that's
isn't
great.
going to work. This isn't going to hold out.
Yeah.
But we can
Yeah.
talk more about that offline.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just, I think it's great information for the
Yeah.
audience as well.
Yeah. 'Cause really, what the thing that happens is, and this isn't the majority of the job, and I want to make sure people understand that. I'm not saying this is how everything was.
For sure.
The majority of the time, like the product that I'm working on, I love it. The
Yeah.
stuff I'm coming up with, the ideas, and honestly, it's not my whole goal is I want to win. I want our company to win. I want us to be the best. I want to beat the competition by innovating. And that's always been my attitude. It's not me, because
Right.
I know that's not how it works. We work on a team. And I've always had that attitude. I've even told managers, and it's probably not the best way to look at it, but I remember telling my one director that was younger, and I said, I want to make you look good, because if you look good, I look good. He goes, he did tell me, you make yourself look good.
Right.
I'm like, but I wanted him to understand, like, I'm not here for just myself.
Yeah.
I want us to win.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to be that person and you're not being set up for success, I can't help you win because you're not giving me the tools to do it. And I finally told my boss, I said, it's like you entering me in Le Mans racing Ferraris, and you're giving me like this 4-cylinder econo box, and I got to win this race somehow they got these V12 engines, and you're giving me a 4-cylinder. I'm like, I'm never gonna, but you got to win. You got to do it. Like
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
It's not going
Yeah.
to happen. But
Exactly.
you use the fact that you justify, look, you work with great people and the products you're doing. Look at all the stuff you've done, and you use that as it'll get better. And I have another product. I can tell you, there's others there that we start confiding a little bit. You have to be
Yeah.
careful because you don't know who's saying what. But
Sure.
there's a product manager. He's almost going through the same thing I've been going through, and I've been trying to help him.
Right.
And he says it's like a pendulum, like it's going really great, and then all of a sudden it's crap again. I
Yeah.
was like, you
Exactly.
gotta. So you justify what's going to get good again. But how many bad pendulum swings? How far is that pendulum going to swing where you break the pendulum and it isn't going to come back?
For sure.
So
For sure.
anyway,
Right on. So, one other thing I want to ask you, because I've been wanting
sure.
to ask it since we started. I'm looking at that skateboard in the background there, and
Yeah.
I'm seeing that it's got the wide tires on it, the wide wheels, and that's a 70s thing, and I'm all about that. I've
So
got one myself that has those wide tires,
so
wide
so
wheels.
it's a cruiser. It's just a longboard for just no tricks. I'm too old to be doing tricks and
Right.
falling and getting hurt. So it's very entry level longboard, but I love riding it. I haven't been on it in a while, to be honest with you, but I have a great neighborhood to do this on, and I need to start getting active again. But
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. There was a point where I'm using it. Funny story, Crayola, right? It's supposed to be
Yeah.
fun and creative. I'm the guy that I had an old 67 bug or 64 bug slammed, and I had my skateboard in it, and I'd park way out, right? Because I'd get there and I'll just park way out here. And I'd ride my longboard in every day, every morning, and then back to the parking lot. And the executives up on the third floor, they had an issue with the designers. They didn't understand us because we didn't fit this suits mold that they were in. Like they thought we were goofballs,
Yeah.
even though we were innovating and creative. But like I got my hoodie on and my jeans and I'm skating in but I still have a nice shirt underneath and whatever. I dress corporate casual, but I'd have my hoodie and apparently somebody saw me riding and then I don't like this. And they had security waiting out for me. I've been with the company for 4 years,
Oh my God.
waiting by my car. And I get there and I pick up the skateboard. Hey, you. I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, do you work here? I'm like, I just came out of the door over here. Didn't you? I show them my badge because I don't fit this mold. And it's very funny. There's a lot of people don't know this about Crayola. There's some really super creative people there, but there's this, they want to have it be this corporate tight. They
Right.
don't like, they want, if they had their way, they'd have designers coming in suits.
Oh
And
man.
you'll be in spray booths, mountain renderings, and building. Like I can't wear a suit, man.
Oh my God.
I'll
For real.
build models. Yeah, it's a weird thing there,
That's
but
wild. That's wild.
yeah, I don't know.
That's a
It's
cool
these
story to,
perceptions.
yeah, exactly. Perceptions. That's a cool story to wrap this up today.
Yep.
And I
Yes,
want to leave the audience with a little reminder that I try to do at the end of each one of these, and it's always listen to your heart and be kind to your mind. Thanks, everybody.
yep, I agree. Thank you.